and Conservation Commission open meeting to open. It's now 7:30. And so let's see, I would like to go ahead and start with adding, Amy has 2 items that we'd like to propose to add to administrative discussions, and then ask if any other committee members have anything that they would like to add. So I believe, Amy, we would like to add an update for the Clean Lakes, and then discuss if there was a spill on 495. Do any of the commissioners have anything else they would like to add to the discussions?
Nope.
Okay, so what we're going to do is I would like to put on hold the approval of minutes, because we would like to jump into 2 administrative discussions that hopefully are with us. The first is 25 Juniper potential enforcement order. Anyone here to speak to that?
Yeah, this is Rob and Beth Rounce, owners of 25 Juniper.
Okay. Thank you.
So I can give you a little bit of background on that, I hope.
Okay.
Have we got that?
Yep, so what we see so far is just the town website. I'm not sure if we're sharing photos of the location at 25 Juniper.
Yeah, the problem with these things is if you change the page, it doesn't change with you. So let me start over again.
Okay.
So this is one that some of you may have seen on the site walk for 22 Woodland. There was a retaining wall that was put up and a patio also.
Yep.
How's that?
It's, yep, so your locus
Aerial photograph.
Yep.
Let me just skip to the bottom. So this is the area. This is over here on the right is 22 Woodland. And this is us all discussing the wetland line through here. And then 25 Juniper. This is the retaining wall and the patio in back. So I haven't issued an enforcement order. I just thought we should bring it up tonight and decide how to best proceed on that. Matt Marrow is in the process of finishing the delineation along this line, along the property line for 22 Woodland. So it'll probably be brought up to about where I think that's Nick is standing. Then the wetland goes on to the other property on the left, and then about where I'm standing, the wetland starts again. So some of that lawn in here is probably going to come up as wetland. But in any case, this is certainly within the 100-foot buffer zone, if not the 50.
Okay. And so as a point of order, it was not delineated prior and did not come in front of the commission for approval, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Septic system is shown as 1997. Was there a wetlands line delineated?
There was not.
Okay.
And we're talking about, basically over in here.
Right. Okay. So I think quite a few commissioners have been out on site. I know I have been out. Michael was there. Chase. Anyone else as a commissioner was able to see both properties, Woodland and Juniper?
Yep, I saw them also, Sarah.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Okay. If anyone's here from 25 Juniper, do you want to just kind of walk us through what your thought process was and understanding where we are going forward with this?
Sure. So this is Rob Rounce. We purchased the home in October of 2020. We had extensive work done inside. We moved in June of 2021. The house as presented to us had a mowed lawn for the area that you see immediately above the timber retaining wall. I'll jump forward and say that I did that in October, November. In June, as we met neighbors, the now former owner of 22 Woodland, pretty much as soon as I got in the backyard, informed me, and for those that have seen the property, you may have seen a tree that is clearly partially damaged. I don't know when that tree came down, I heard from the former owner of 22 Woodland that it had been a big mess that had been previously cleaned up. But then the former owner, Leatrice Sandy Schiavo, she went out of her way to tell me that she had attempted to get the realtor who was selling the property, Cheryl Cowley Hellinger, to take care of the dangerous tree that, in her opinion, there was a part of the damaged tree that was clearly had an overhang on 22 Woodland. She informed me that she had tried to get the owner and the real estate agent to take care of it. They hadn't. She didn't request, but she had a way of saying it in a way that, now it's your problem. Sorry that it's your problem. I did what I could. And she really wanted the problem resolved. It was over hers. The tree had already been taken down in part. She wanted it removed. Nowhere in that discussion was there any reference to wetlands. She let me know that she wouldn't allow any tree work to be done on her property because of bad experience that she had with other people, apparently. I engaged Scott's Tree and Landscape out of, I believe it's Wexford, to come and take a look. They did. I obtained from the property that I think Amy showed with the photo is probably going to be identified as having some wetlands. It's the property that adjoins and intersects between 22 Woodland and 25 Juniper. That person, Mike Giblin, allowed me to have Scott's Tree and Landscape put their equipment on his property to come up so that he could get a crane in there and deal with the pruning. Both Mike and Sandy appear to me to have lived there for decades. No discussion of wetlands whatsoever in existence. As Scott's Tree and Landscape dealt with, you folks know this stuff, I don't, but I'm learning. I did have a tree that was not damaged removed that was within the, now appears to be from Matt, the 50 NDA. There was a trunk about 10 feet high that the real estate agent had taken the tree down because she viewed it as damaged or problematic with regard to the sale of 25 Juniper. She had done that before I arrived and left a 10-foot trunk up. It was within a few feet of the undamaged tree that I took down. Scott's Tree and Landscape came down and did that work on September 9th of 2021. At that point in time, they said that unless Sandy permitted them access the property, despite their huge crane, they couldn't get to her damaged tree. She had a choice. She ultimately decided to take down a large ash tree. You can see the stump on the property, again, within the 50-foot NDA, now that we know that. So that work took place. That was the beginning of our attempting to make this home or this property our home. I then proceeded to engage. I did have the stumps grinded. I should have said that. From my standpoint, I saw a lot of Japanese knotweed right behind my property. That would be, I think, as all of you have walked it, you see a big chunk of Japanese knotweed right there. But between what is now skunk cabbage that is seen, there was an area that was routinely mowed as we were no experience before seeing the property. There was a mowed area that now, from where the skunk cabbage is probably within 10, 15 feet. It was an area, I don't know, 20, 30 by 30. So I saw just mowed grass back there. So I guess all that background, sorry to take so much time explaining it. No awareness presented to me from two neighbors that lived there for decades, no awareness of wetlands. I apologize for doing this work. Had I known, trust me, I would have submitted a request. This has come up as a result of the ownership change in 22 Woodland. Amy did identify a 331 Goldsmith that I think is on your agenda tonight. She said it's a somewhat similar situation of wetlands being identified after not realizing and after having work done. So I've knocked on that door, spoken with that person briefly. They were very helpful. They gave me Matt's name. And I know that I'm in contact with both Matt and the GPR that's doing the survey work for 22 Woodland. You know, thinking I know where this is going, I'm preparing to, and have already arranged with both parties to assist me with this effort in order to regain compliance or do whatever is determined needs to be done. Again, apologies here. Tried to give you the background. If you have questions, happy to try to answer your questions.
I would like to thank you, Mr. Rounds, for your thorough, we're not in any rush. We always like to hear the background, so to understand that. So I would like to ask commissioners, especially ones that have been on site, if they have any questions. When I was on site, the area is stable, with the exception of a little bit where it's been pulled back from the wall. But would like to hear what commissioners would like to do going forward.
If I could, my wife just informed me I didn't talk about the patio. I mentioned DP Turf. I just say I engaged them. They did work on the patio in October and November. That's when the patio was put in. And again, and as well as 4 Thuja Green Giant 10 to 12 footers were installed between my property and 22 Woodland. In part, the Green Giants, while we'd all like privacy, specifically Sandy went out of her way to let us know that if we don't pull our shades down in the evening, she can watch our TV that's on the street side of 25 Juniper. So we were trying to do what we could in this new place. And with that, I apologize that I didn't continue on with that explanation of the patio.
Okay. Thank you. Just as a point of order, have you engaged Matt Morrow to do your surveying as well?
Matt has been engaged by Nick Pauling from GPR, who's spoken with you about 22 Woodland. So while I've not specifically spoken with Matt myself, I have been informed and have spoken with Nick from GPR, who informed me via email that he had already spoken with Matt and has arranged for his engagement on our property to assist us with this effort.
Good evening, sir. Nick Pauling from GPR. Yes, Mr. Morrow is going to be continuing the wetland line down the southern boundary property line of 22 Woodland that would most affect Mr. Rounce on Friday, the 20th, and our survey crew will be on site at the same time. So that's this Friday.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners have questions, comments? So what is in front of us is a potential enforcement order. So we need to discuss that going forward to see if you would like to have that enforced at some level.
Sarah, you had mentioned that the site's currently stable.
Well, meaning that with many times we have enforcement orders that are very reactionary and are immediate. I would ask the other commissioners that have been on site that I feel as though this could be something that can be done in specific layers, similar to Goldsmith Street.
Yeah, the grass is all growing. There's no erosion possibility. So there's no imminent threat beyond what's already been built.
Are we thinking like an after the fact NOI for this at this point, or?
You have options. It's the pleasure of the commission of which they would like to pursue, but we need to pick one path.
Yeah, those would be the two options, basically an enforcement order asking for an after the fact notice of intent, or since they're already here with their consultants, is just assume they will be doing an after the fact notice of intent.
With the enforcement order, you have specific dates to which you have to act in.
Yes.
So, and that's, well, there is good faith on certainly the Rounces. Sometimes when it comes to infractions like this, while it seems aggressive, it doesn't have to be aggressive, but it's more of a point of logistics with the enforcement order. And that way everything, the stages are aligning. So we would need to have a motion from the commission on which way they would like to go. The majority of the work is definitely within a resource area.
My 2 cents here is I'd like to follow the same playbook as the reference site on Goldsmith and do it through an enforcement order. But not to take a punitive stance on it, but to maintain consistency and to establish those deadlines and expectations.
Okay. So can we consider that motion?
I'm happy to turn that into a motion to issue an enforcement order for 25 June.
Okay.
And does anybody have any, and maybe even Nick can jump in on this, recommended date for having it filed? The next meeting is June 7th. I'm sure they can't have it filed by then. And the one after that is the 21st.
I would move to 2 meetings out because they need to secure engineering. They need to do some discovery to try and figure where the wetlands has been filled as well. So my thought would be to give some
July 5, I think that is.
June 21, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yep, June 21. Is there any other discussion or second on the motion?
I'll second Chase's motion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, roll call vote. Let's see, Brian,
Ryan Crowley, aye.
Carl,
Carl Melberg, aye.
Chase,
Just for the
Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Michael,
Michael Livingston, aye.
myself, aye. It's unanimous.
So thank you. So Mr. Rounce and Mrs. So what that means is just to be in contact with Amy, and we'll set up some action parameters of when we would like to have your surveying done. And we'll ask you to come back in on the 21st of June to carry on discussions with it. So nothing in terms of removals, nothing happens. Everything stays where it is until we come up with a strategy for that. But I appreciate you coming in and speaking with us tonight.
And just so I know, will Amy initiate to me or am I supposed to initiate to Amy?
I would circle around with your consultants and then he can get back in touch with me.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, let's go ahead. Request for certificate of compliance 265 Foster, which is Mass DEP 204-648.
I think Larry Beals is here for that. This is the rear part of Stoneyard.
I'm ready to begin if you are.
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. Would you like me to share a plan?
That would be wonderful.
Okay. And I'm hoping everybody can see a plan.
Yep.
Okay. Let me make it a little bit larger. Okay, so by way of background, we filed a request for a certificate of compliance, and I met with Amy on the site and Andrew and Sarah last week. I think that was, and the owner, John, was out there. And we walked the entire site. This is what I'm circling with my cursor is the back of the site. So by orientation, this is really the rear portion of the site. To the right of the plan is, on the edge of the right of the plan is the existing building, the paved parking lot. Everything that you're seeing on this plan is unpaved. And then Foster Street is to the south or to the right of this plan. And we walked the entire site. I think what was of particular interest was this edge, because along the western property line, there is a wetland that I'm tracing with the cursor, the wetland area here, and there's a detention basin over here and a swale drainage area that looks and functions like a wetland today. So the result of that site walk is the site appeared to be stable. The comments that were made, suggestions by the commissioners who were present and with Amy, was that this detention basin should be cleaned out. Brush should be removed from the base of it and up the embankments to the top of the embankment. And if I can enlarge this a bit, I'll try to focus in on that note. So we added a note right here: all brush has been removed from the bottom of the basement to the top of the embankment. There was also an area where we could observe that there was water that sheeted across the parking lot down into this corner, and it was appeared to be building velocity and causing some erosion or scouring in this area. So what we discussed out in the field was, it would make a lot of sense to put a stone filter berm there. That has been constructed, and the note here says 9-inch minus stone filter berm. And then going forward, to demark the limit of clearing, the owner was asked to place boulders, which is shown by this line that is a solid line with circles in it, beginning about at the existing detention basin, following the edge of clearing where my cursor is. And we added a note to that saying edge of clearing has been marked with large boulders placed 6 to 8 feet apart. 6 to 8 feet apart is sufficient to prevent a snowplow from pushing through that. So I think I've summarized the discussions in the field and the revisions on the plan, so I can answer any questions anyone may have.
Larry, can you just give us an update from when we were on property to what's been done now? Has the basin been cleared and rocks been established?
Yes, I should have been more clear, Sarah, with that. This is an as-built as of today.
Okay.
So the filter berm is in, the basin has been cleared, the rocks have been placed, and I don't want to speak for Amy, but my understanding is she's reviewed this in the field, so she can probably corroborate what I just said or not.
Yep, I went out there Monday morning and it was all set.
Cool. Out of just pure curiosity, did we find any other pipes or anything in any of those basins? We were curious how the water and things were flowing in there.
No, unfortunately, that remains a mystery.
Okay. We're used to that in Littleton. Any commissioners have any questions? Or if not, someone would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we issue a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 204-648 Stoneyard.
Second.
Thank you, Carl.
All right, roll call vote. Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Chase.
Chase Gerving, aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to hang around. We're going to talk about groundwater later.
Okay. All right. What I'd like to do is to bounce back to approve the minutes from May 3rd. Does anyone have any omissions or corrections to May 3rd's meeting minutes that was circulated?
It looks great.
Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion that we approve the minutes from May 3rd, 2022.
Thank you,
Second
Brian.
that.
Chase is a second.
All right, roll call vote. Michael,
Michael Livingston, aye.
Carl,
Carl Melberg, aye.
Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Brian,
Ryan Crowley, aye.
Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Chase,
Chase Gurley, aye.
myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay. What I'd like to do, prior to going back to discussions, let's go ahead and, Amy, with your approval, open the 745 request for determination of applicability, 147 to Hattawan, which is an upgrade of a failed septic system. Is there anyone here to speak to 149?
9.
Hi, that would be me, Ted Doucette, representing the owners.
And
I'm
Ted,
assuming you want to do a screen share here?
are the owners present?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't see the names up there. And I closed my window here that had the plans up. Let's see. Okay. Do I have screen share, Amy?
Not yet. You have the capability, but we don't see it yet.
Oh, what's that? Oh, I got it. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So this is obviously 149 Tehadawon Road. So this is Upper Tehadawon. You can see on the locus plan here, gives you a little bit of idea, but it's on the west side of Tehadawon up toward Harwood. And as you can see, the Tehadawon Road here is up here, and then the property slopes down here toward the wetland. We have the bordering vegetated wetland delineated here in purple. That was delineated by Leah Basbanes, who does all my delineations. And then I marked the 50-foot, nice bright fuchsia here, and in fire truck red up here is the 100-foot buffer zone. The current system is in this area here. There's a septic tank here, and then an unknown leach field of unknown dimensions in this area here. You can see we did some test holes over here. When we walked out there and started doing the test holes based on just visual evidence and lines of occupation, we thought the property line was out here. So we tested in this area. Once we got the property line survey back, we found out obviously that we're squeezed in here. We did attempt to put a system in there. It turned out this system was going to be, the final grade is going to be about 2 feet above grade due to the groundwater. We were using a Presby system because that works well on a slope, but the system itself is 2 feet high. So it really put a mound here where we're going to be filling up against the foundation. And it was really tight filling up against this lot line here. So we went back out here and started testing again, just more testing over here. We did 2 test pits here, got caught by Amy doing test pits. So she got to see that work for a minute. And what we're going to do is put in a 1,500 gallon 2-compartment septic tank here, 1,000 gallon pump chamber here to pump up to this area right in here. I can zoom in a little bit, I think. Yeah, the grade comes kind of across here, and then there's a retaining wall right in this area. So from this location here next to the garage, you jump down probably 3 or 4 feet. And that's what the retaining wall is to hold back this soil here. Gentle grade coming down here. We're so close to the lot line. We're putting in a wall for the breakout fill. So in order to minimize that wall, we decided to go with a geomat, which if you're familiar with that, it's a much thinner profile system where the system itself is only about 4 or 5 inches thick, and you set that on a 6-inch bed of sand. There's also no over excavation required, where a lot of systems require a 5-foot over excavation. So that allows us to actually put in more panels here of the geomat and more treatment so that we can get closer to that maximum feasible compliance. So if we had to have a 5-foot overdig, one of these panels or a couple panels would be removed so that we could get the over excavation in there. We're right off the property line here, putting in a short wall in this area. As this slopes down, the disadvantage of the geomat is that it has to be set level. So as this slopes down and the geomat stays level, the ground comes up here. So right at this end of the bed here, we're coming up to elevation 89, and the bottom elevation is probably about 87.5. So we're going to have, 1.5 or 2 feet of wall in here. And then the wall is on here just to prevent, just to allow us to, again, get maximum feasible compliance without filling onto Stan's property over here. This is, I can't remember the names. Friend of mine, good friend. So then coming out here, the other advantage is the breakout. There's no breakout requirement for the geomat. So therefore we don't have to put any type of a barrier in here. We can just come out, a good reasonable 5 feet or so, and then start our sloping down. This is a pretty good design. I think it's really the best we can do. I put some thought into this. We considered different systems. This one I felt was the best fit. The geomat has been determined by the state to provide additional treatment. So it lets you reduce the offset from groundwater by 2 feet. So that also is used to let us reduce this height here. This is currently a gravel driveway. So one thing the owner and I talked about is they're going to put up 2 sections of split rail fence or something else up here to prevent people from driving over this to protect it, because you can't drive on this system. Other than that, we got some erosion controls here. We're pretty close to 75 feet away here. Moving up slope is not really feasible because as you move up slope, the slope is a little bit steeper, and you're going to just kick out this end more and create an increased amount of fill. There are contours obviously shown here, but if you're walking out there, you can see that this area is a little more level than this. And I think that's where we can reduce minimize the height of the fill. That's about it.
Entertain questions from the commissioners. Any commissioners have any comments on the plan for the color coding or resource stockpiling? So this is a request for determination.
One of the conditions for a negative determination here with respect to septic systems is that we're not changing the amount of treatment capacity, that is not adding a bedroom's worth of septic treatment. Ted, can you speak to the size of this system relative to the system it's replacing, please?
It is 3-bedroom capacity, and it's going to be a 3-bedroom capacity.
I think we may need that written down or stated or documented somewhere just to dot the i's and cross the t's. It should be stated in your findings or something, right? Because it's on the plan that it's 3 bedrooms, and it's not new construction, and it says on the plans as a repair. So yeah. And that's fine. I'd like it to note on the plans or in our findings. I don't really care where that we're going from 3-bedroom to 3-bedroom.
Yeah, I can put that on the permit form.
Oh, go ahead, Brian. You just went off.
Yep. Ted, did you look at the front of the house for placement of the system? I saw that you looked off to the right there. You did some test bits, but looking specifically, between the house and the road, if you don't mind bringing the plan back up.
Yep, I did. We have utilities in the area, and that's one of the comments. I've been kind of holding off on the comments on meeting Jim's comments because there is a water line that comes in here, and based on this soil, this soil in here was just not good. So I don't know where the transition is here, but between the driveway and the setbacks, I don't think we could have gotten anything better in there.
I just have a couple points of order. You state temporary stockpiling within the 50 to 100, not allowed in a resource area. The other is well over a decade ago, we established required While I love the color of your lines, they do not meet the town code for establishing wetlands. So I think it's cumbersome to read sometimes when we look at that of green and blues, not magenta.
I looked at the regulations. I thought because I have a layout for your plans, and then I went back to the regulations and I couldn't see the colors in there. Is it somewhere else?
There's a filing procedures form, which is like 2 or 3 pages. It's in there.
Oh, all right.
I'm just happy to see any colors. I don't care what color.
You dropped the bar, Chase.
I would tell you I'm elevating the bar relative to the
Discussion
typical.
on stockpiling, I think it's in and out. And commissioners have to see if they'd like to, what you would like to do going forward. If you would like to have a site walk or things staked, or what you would like to do going forward.
I just have one other question, and this is more before we come to those specifics, Sarah, and this goes back to the plan. Ted, would you mind to toss the plan back up? In the narrative that you put forward, you stated that sites characterized by poor soil, high groundwater, and slow percolation rate. I assume that's got to do with, given those were the early ones, test holes 1 or 1 and 2. Is that right?
There's high groundwater everywhere. So looking at test hole 1 and 2 that were over on the side done in October, we had groundwater, estimated seasonal high groundwater at 24 and 28 inches. When we went back out in March, we were actually found it at 50 and 40. So it's still, it was still pretty high. Regarding the perk rate, I dug a perk hole and as high as I could, and it filled with groundwater. So we're actually not able to perk it. According to Title V, they have a policy for this. If you can't perk it for upgrades and repairs, that you take it to a laboratory and they give you a classification of the soil. Then you go to Title V and you look at the classification and you pick the lowest, the smallest LTAR, which is a long-term acceptance rate, is basically how many gallons a day, how many gallons per square feet you can apply to the ground. So you have to pick the worst case scenario and design based on that. So basically this is designed on a 30-minute per inch perk rate.
And I guess where I'm going with this is, if we have high groundwater in the southeast corner of the site, which is top right on this, I'm surprised that we don't have high groundwater in the location that you've got the proposed system. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable reaching a negative determination until the Board of Health has signed off on this. Has the Board of Health signed off on this location?
Yeah, yes, Jim Griffey has reviewed it and sent comments. Yes, some comments
No,
are.
not Jim. Has the Board of Health signed off?
Yes, they did. They did sign off. It was a battle, but they did sign off.
Can you show us where those test holes were for those samplings, please?
Yeah, right here is deep test hole 3.
I think
Sorry.
you might need to bring your plan back up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, shit. Sorry. I'm going back and forth. I don't know.
Maybe just leave it up while we continue.
All right. Okay. Yep. Deep test hole 3 here, deep test hole 4. I believe the actual sample was taken from deep test hole 3.
And are those the only 2 areas that sample was sent out?
Yes. So we sent one sample originally from over here because we couldn't get a perk rate. And then over here, we took a sample and because we couldn't get a perk rate.
And which was worse, 3 or 4?
I think they both came in at the same type of soil. No, so deep test hole 1 came in as loam, which is a class 2 soil. The second one came in as sandy loam, which is also a class 2. So slightly different textures, but same result of an LTAR of 0.33.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other commissioners have any questions, comments? What they would like to do?
I mean, I'm not sure I would approve this if I was on the Board of Health, but given that they have,
What's the question, Chase? Because, you know, if it's about groundwater, you know, this is like, you know, I can't explain geology. I can't tell you why it was lower up top, other than, you know, the soil was probably worse and it was more of a perched water table. Down here, why it's deeper, maybe the soil was a little bit better. I mean, according to the classification, it was a little bit more permeable. But, you know, Jim Griffey's out there all the time, you know, you know, the Board of Health has to witness the soil test. So, you know, he and I, you know, I kind of say, this is what I think. He'll tell me what he thinks. And we, you know, we come to a reasonable conclusion of where we both feel that the groundwater is. I mean, he and I usually we're very close, and, you know, it's never a battle. We usually kind of, you know, have an agreement on where we find it. So it's not that, you know, we just go out there and do it and it's kind of guesswork. It's something that I'm trained in, and Jim's trained in. We've done, you know, I've done probably 350 soil evaluations, and he's witnessed a lot more than that. So,
what I was about to say was, given that they've approved it, I wasn't going to open that, but since you asked, it's got to do with the fact that we've got high groundwater on the southeast portion of the site, which is elevation-wise quite a bit higher elevation than the north or northwest portion of the site. That's an incredibly steep groundwater table if it is in fact dropping as much as it would need to in order to give you the clearance where you've got the current septic system. On top of that, deep test hole 4 has, reading your plans, has a groundwater table at about an elevation of 90. And I don't understand how that is supposed to work when
so there's two ways that the state
system
requires.
is sitting just on top of the groundwater table. Alas, though, it's not our purview to review the septic systems. And
Well, no, but I want you to feel comfortable with it too, you know. So, I mean, you know, there's two different groundwater tables or types, I guess. You know, you have the groundwater that's in the ground and it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. And that causes the redoxymorphic features of the models. Then you have groundwater that will go through the ground and it'll end up sitting, it'll go through a more permeable layer and then end up sitting on a more pervious layer. And that's called a perched groundwater table. So if I had to bet and anything on my, you know, experience in education and training, I would say that deep test hole 1 and 2 were more of perched water, where down on the other side, the material is more permeable. That would be more of the up, down from actual water in the ground. So that's my theory.
I mean, I'm just reading off your plans here, but the estimated seasonal high groundwater table at deep test hole 4, 89.84 feet. I don't understand how this is going to work if the groundwater is already at 90 feet.
I can't explain it another way. I don't know if you want to sit down and have coffee sometime. We can try to sit down and do it. But I mean, that's, you know, it's perched groundwater versus, you know,
And carry on.
groundwater coming in.
Commissioners have any questions or comments on this? I still come back to that stockpiling is not allowed in a resource, so you'll need to withdraw that from your plan and just make other accommodations, either in and out. Other mentions. What would we like to do? Anyone want to have a site walk? Anyone ready to close this?
I think a site walk would be helpful with this site.
If that's the case, what would you like to see staked out for the applicant?
Let's see here.
So just the septic system, edge of fill, limit of fill, excuse me.
And did I see some trees are going to be taken down where the proposed system is going in?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Andrew, what would you like to see marked? Trees that are coming down and basically the system?
Yep, that'd be great.
Okay. Would we like to see?
And a proposed maybe new stockpiling area as well?
Yep.
We don't have a stockpile area. We're not going to have one. If we can't put it there, there's no place to put it. If we can't put it within the 100, there's no place to put it.
You have one laid out north of the system.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think looking at it now, there's gonna be trucks coming in and out of there, but that's fine. We'll have to deal with it. It's just it's just an expense to have to take it in and out, but if that's what's required, it's required.
when would you have this done and when would you like to schedule a site walk? It's May 17th.
Well, what's that?
Today is May 17th. When do you think you would have it staked? So the
I can stake it anytime you like. I can stake it. You want to go tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? It'll be staked.
commissioner.
So let's say I'll stake it by Wednesday at 10 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, Thursday.
Yep. So commissioners, when would you like to go out and someone throw out a date and time and then we'll go from there. We'll probably have another one as of tonight anyways. I can do Thursday, which is the 19th.
Thursday at 5:30?
I can do during the day, Andrew. We could, well, see who else can do others. Anyone else up for Thursday the 19th? So Andrew, if you can have someone else join you, go ahead and do that. And if I can make it, I can. So Andrew's proposing this Thursday, 5:30. Anybody else?
What time during the day, sir, were you thinking? Because I might be able to shoot back at lunch time.
That'd be awesome. I can do lunch.
All right, I'll see how the workflow is going to be, because some days are busy and I can't.
Well, let's try and shoot for the 19th at 5:30. Are there any other commissioners that would like to try and join Andrew at that time?
I can do 5:30, but not at lunchtime.
Okay. So right now we have Andrew and Michael. And then if anyone else can join in, just show up and we'll go from there. Okay. So
All right. So just be clear, we're staking the corners of the bed.
Yep. Edge of
And then
any in the resource area, any of your kind of edge of fill with that system.
You want to stake either the center or the corner of the pump chamber?
Sure. Okay. Okay, so we are going to move this on to June 7th. Thank you.
that's an extension too. It's not all right. It's not a closed pending.
Nope. Not when there's things that have to be moved from the plan. You have to take off stockpiling and there's a site review. Okay, we're going to carry.
Can I just jump in 1 second? I think our disagreement about groundwater, take a look at your details associated with test hole 4. Some of them match to 4 significant digits, the details from test hole 2. And I wonder if there was just a transcription mistake there. And that could explain why we're disagreeing. The elevation is identical and the estimated seasonal high groundwater is identical in depth hole 2 and hole 4.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and open. I know we're running behind the 8 o'clock, which is a public meeting request for determination of applicability. 0 Warren King Street, construct a crosswalk with pedestrian curb ramps. Is anyone here to chat about this?
Hi, yep, this is Rihanna Summers from Epsilon Associates.
Okay, thank you, Rihanna.
So hi everyone, my name, like I said, I'm Rihanna. I work for Epsilon Associates and I'm here with David Goldstein from Mass DOT. And I'm here on behalf of Mass DOT to talk about their proposed crosswalk and pedestrian curb ramp improvement project on King Street. So I was just going to start off by sharing my screen to show, let's see, I'll show the plan. So I did realize as I was listening to the prior meeting that I'm realizing this BLSF line I should have shown in orange. So apologies for that. But so just to go over kind of the existing conditions for this project, the project is located within King Street or Route 2A at its intersection with Warren Street. And all of the proposed work is going to be within the existing highway layout of King Street. And the whole site is within the 100-foot buffer zone and the 200-foot riverfront area associated with Beaver Brook. This plan, the approximate top of bank for Beaver Brook is shown in blue. And then you can see that the site is also located partially within floodplain, which is shown in pink, should be orange. And we don't show riverfront or the buffer zone lines on this plan just because due to the scale of the plan, all of the work is within buffer zone and riverfront area. So basically there's actually an existing crosswalk at this location, but Mass DOT is just proposing to replace it, and they're going to be installing pedestrian curb ramps to help with access on the north and south side of the new crosswalk along King Street. And this work, we are filing a request for determination of applicability just due to the minor nature of the impacts. As you can see, there are some proposed impacts within both riverfront area, the buffer zone, and some very minor impacts in the 100-year floodplain. And this work is associated with the construction of the southern pedestrian ramp, which is shown in here. The majority of the southern pedestrian ramp will be constructed within existing paved roadway areas, and most of the ramp will be within the roadway itself, or constructed within the existing roadway footprint, but a small portion of this proposed ramp will be within the roadway shoulder, which is currently a grassed area. I have some photos, I can show those as well if that helps. But there's like a narrow strip of grass in between the guardrail and King Street where a portion of the ramp will be constructed, and there will be grading within that area. And that's where our proposed impacts to resource areas and buffer zone come from for the project. The project does propose approximately 53 square feet of work within riverfront area. And it also proposes about 5 square feet of work within BLSF. And all of that work is associated with the outer limits of grading for that southern ramp. And the grading will occur between the guardrail and the existing roadway. And with regard to the work proposed in BLSF, this, like I said, this will be limited to the very outer limits of grading, and there won't be any impervious area added within BLSF. There'll just be some minor grading, and then they'll stabilize it with loam and seed after all the grading's done and the new ramp is installed. So this will just be, it'll be a de minimis amount of grading within BLSF, which is why we filed for an RDA versus an NOI. And the grading, like I said, it's 5 square feet. It will be restored after construction, and it will not result in a displacement of flood storage volume. And there will be, obviously we're working pretty close to the river, but they will install sediment controls down gradient of the proposed limits of grading to protect the adjacent river. And actually the project will even result in a net increase in pervious area within the riverfront area. And yeah, that's about it. It's pretty straightforward. I think, like I said, all disturbed areas will be restored with loam and seed following construction of the project. And the rest of the work will be occurring within existing paved or existing disturbed areas. So because of that, the applicant is requesting a negative determination category 2 from the commission, finding that the proposed work in BLSF riverfront area and the buffer zone would not remove, fill, dredge, or alter the resource areas.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. That was very complete. Thank you for that. Any commissioners have any questions or comments on this? I think many of us know the area, probably know it well. I've probably walked on it. Would anyone like to offer any comments or?
It
I have no
sounds
problem with
great.
the negative determination.
Yeah, or make a motion for a -2?
So
Anyone?
moved. Oh, with associated waiver.
Second.
No bylaw because it's the state, so you don't need a waiver.
Oh, without associated waiver.
So Andrew, Chase, you were the motion, Andrew, the second?
Yeah, I mean, let me formalize. I move to issue a negative determination 2 for the request for determination of applicability for the Warren King Street crossing.
All right, roll call vote. Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Chase.
Just go
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
And myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Okay.
Just have a good
Thank you
night.
very much.
You
Okay,
too.
I'd like to jump ahead to the 8:15 water sampling results review, 151, 153 Taylor Street. DOP 906 and 917.
Okay, if it's okay, I'll start.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Larry Beals. I'm with Beals Associates. I noticed that there are a few commissioners. We spent a lot of time with the commission a couple of years ago, redeveloping the property known as 151 and 153 Taylor Street. So Matt Costa is with me tonight, and also from the owners of the project, Jeffrey Sullivan and Tim Irvin are joining us. So we designed the site, they own it, and hopefully we can answer any questions or comments that you may have. So to make the presentation efficient, I'd like to share a PowerPoint if I may.
Yep, your request accepted.
Okay. And I'm assuming you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, so some of the members are very familiar with this, and what we're really hoping to do is provide some background information to the members that have joined the commission since we went through this permit process. But we've got a couple of air photos. In the background in the upper left-hand corner is Taylor Street, and crosses over 495. You cannot see it. This is the property that was formerly developed by Digital Equipment Corporation a number of years ago. There were really two aspects to the project. One is this building, which is located closer to Taylor Street. This is Route 2, headed east towards the top of the plan towards Boston. West is towards the bottom of the plan. And you can actually see 495, Taylor Street, and the cloverleaves. So this is all in the Beaverbrook Valley Aquifer. This is an Amazon building, and this is a parking lot to support the Amazon use. One of the things that we did on this site plan is there is a crossing here that has wetlands on either side. The commission was concerned about de-icing compounds. So this is a glycol, it's a concrete surface driveway with a glycol heating element in it, so that in the winter it warms and there's no need for de-icing chemicals as it crosses in close proximity to the wetlands. By frame of reference, this is what the site looked like. This is 495. This is Route 2, Taylor Street, and Digital Equipment in the late 70s, early 80s developed a 100,000 and a 200,000 square foot two-story office R&D buildings. The property was subsequently sold. Northbridge initially bought the front portion of the site closest to Taylor Street and 495 and developed this building. And subsequently, it was leased to Amazon that needed the extra parking area. So the second building was acquired, demolished, and the parking lot was built as you see today. Through extensive discussions with the Conservation Commission, we developed an operation and maintenance plan in an effort to address de-icing compounds, and also a monitoring program. And 4 wells were installed. They're labeled GZA1, which is right here at the edge of the parking lot. GZ2, which is located right at this point. GZ3, which is located where my pointer is, and GZ4, which is off of close to Monarch Drive. And generally, groundwater flows from the right-hand side of this plan to the left-hand side of the plan. We'll illustrate that to you. But GZ1 was located to see if there's any impact from de-icing chemicals on this parking lot. Likewise, GZ3 was located near the outfall from a detention basin to monitoring the groundwater. Theoretically, GZ4 is monitoring the groundwater coming onto the site. And likewise with GZ2, it's catching groundwater, it's testing groundwater before it passes by that parking lot. Also, one of the great benefits of this property, the project, the process, the permit process, was that a lot of the wetland area surrounding the site was subdivided off, and it was deeded to the Littleton Water Department. And I understand there's a pretty good well site here that the Municipal Water Department is testing with the hope of developing a new water source. So therefore, protecting the quality of the groundwater becomes perhaps even more important. So going way up in scale, we looked at the USGS Surfacial Geology map. These are older maps in terms of the features that they show. This is the 495 Cloverleaf, but you can see it was, this was mapped at a time when 495 had not been completed. It's still valid because, this is a geologic map, and geology changes very slowly. So while it was done a while ago, we think it's pretty accurate. What you can see is this is Taylor Street. This is Route 2 running east and west, 495 north and south. And on the other side of 495 would continue where my laser pointer is right now. This is a section apparently that was built. And what this illustrates is that we have a boundary condition. So right in the center here is the Beaverbrook Valley. And it's a deposit of sand and gravel, and groundwater is generally moving in a northeasterly direction through that valley. And we have a boundary condition over here. It's glacial till and bedrock, and generally the slope slopes towards Beaverbrook being the low spot. And then we have a boundary condition on the other side of the valley, bedrock and thin glacial till. And then the yellow deposits, the yellowish brown deposits, are stratified sand and gravel. And then the purple colors are wetland deposits. And then what we superimposed on this is the approximate location of the test wells. So we have a monitoring well here, monitoring well here, here, and this is the GZ4, which is next to Monarch Drive. So based on this map, our assumption is that groundwater is flowing from this boundary through the sand and gravel deposits to a point of discharge with Beaverbrook, and it's acting to pull the water down the valley. These are the test results that you received in a letter report from GZ and GZA, and it lists the monitoring well on the left-hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4. The well screen, the feet below grade, and just as a note, this next round of testing, the wells will be surveyed so that we will no longer be measured. GZA will not be measuring the depth below grade as they have here, but it'll be a elevation tied into a datum. And so when you compare the elevation in one well, it'll be on the same datum as the elevation in another well, which I think will be very helpful. I listened to the earlier debate about where exactly the groundwater elevation is, and I think this will, by putting everything on the same datum, I think we'll get some good information. We have the sampling dates, the depth to water, and these are not elevations. I'll call your attention to note 3 that says depth to water included an approximate 3-foot stick up at each location. So the well monitor is measuring the depth of the water, taking 3 feet off of that and saying that's the distance below grade, but there's no reference to what the grade is. So they're not absolute elevations. It's just depth below grade. And then we have
Larry, can I stop you right there? I'm sorry. Can you explain that again? So depth of water is off the riser, not feet below ground surface, or you've already made the adjustment in depth of water 2 feet below ground surface?
Made the adjustment.
Okay. So when I'm looking at in a screen interval in GZ1 of 9 to 24 feet, and I see the depth of water is roughly 17 feet, we're comparing apples to apples there. Is that right?
Can you repeat that again so I can follow it?
I'm trying to make sure we're actually in the screen interval in these. So the well screen interval in GZ1 is 9 to 24 feet below ground surface.
Correct.
Okay. The depth to water is about 17 feet below ground surface, or about 17 feet below the riser.
Okay. Below the riser, because if you look at note 3 at the bottom here, it says depth to water included an approximate 3 feet stick up at each location. So if you're reading 16.98 minus,
it's really more like 14 feet below.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's what I'm here for. And that's a good question. We're going to solve all that by putting everything. So the next set of readings that you see, if it says 16, that'll mean 16 feet above sea level, or whatever the number is. We'll be able to compare each well to the other well. So we've tested for chloride, and on GZ1, 2, and 3, the levels are pretty good. By comparison, I believe groundwater standards for chloride allow up to 250 milligrams per liter. These levels for these 3 wells are pretty good. As you probably noticed if you looked at the report, GZ4 has pretty high readings. 640, 178, 117, and 718. I think that's perhaps, we're closer to 495, we're closer to Monarch Drive. I saw some comments that it may be close to a catch basin that may be influencing it. And I will say as an overview on these data that these are minimal data points, and we're committed to the Conservation Commission to doing this for 5 years. And obviously, the more data we have, it's hard to project trends on 4 data points. We haven't really come to a conclusion on any of this other than GZ4 seems to be a well that has the greatest amount of impact. Calcium readings are all fairly low. I believe you're allowed or recommended 50 to 150. And sodium is all pretty reasonable until you get back down to GZ4, we're up to 400, 139, 107, 459. Recommended ranges are about 30 to 60. So the other 3 wells appear to be fine. And then the total hardness. So theoretically, the more calcium and chloride and sodium that you should have harder water in those wells. But there doesn't seem to be a trend yet established on those readings. This is the last slide. That's always the best part of a presentation, probably for the commission. But a question was asked about the stabilized low flow groundwater sampling field parameters. And we went back to GZA and asked them to provide these data. And so this is the GZA tabulation of the stabilized low flow groundwater sampling field parameters. And my understanding is that low flow purging and sampling simply involves the extracting groundwater rates comparable to ambient flow. The purpose is to not stir up the water sitting in the well and draw in stagnant water for testing, but to more or less imitate the drawdown of the water level is minimized, and it avoids the mixing of stagnant water and water from the screened intake area of the well is reduced. So, and I guess I'll leave it at that, and we'll open it up to any questions or comments the commissioners may have.
My only comment, Larry, is that in subsequent reports, if you can make sure to include the low flow parameters, that in particular, when I requested that, I was looking for the specific conductivity to see how well it aligned with your chloride and sodium and so on. And my rough read of things looks like you're more or less aligned within those. There might be some higher conductivity readings than you would expect in isolated circumstances based on what we saw in chloride and sodium and so on.
Yeah, I think these are important parameters to have because what I understand we're looking for are trends, and we want to either see a flat curve or we want to see a flat trend. And if it begins to be trending in the wrong direction, then, doing this with the frequency that we have on an annual basis, we can perhaps mitigate it before it becomes problematic. So we'll make this part of the future reports.
Larry, to your point about trends, if you could add to our wish list for the next report, just graphing some of these data, that would be helpful to see.
I started doing that, and it's not as simple as it sounds. The first thing I built was a spreadsheet on Excel, and then I began to chart that, and all it was doing was confusing me, and it was confusing me because we just don't have enough data points. So without your request, my plan was once we had more data points, we'll begin to graph it. So absolutely.
Very good.
Great idea.
Thank you.
And so our next, it appears that the next will be in June. And Amy, you're furnished straight away with what the data comes through? Sorry, you're muted. Any other commissioners have any other questions? I know many of you love numbers. So
one other wish list with this, we could in subsequent reports get a figure that shows these locations, particularly once the elevations are surveyed in, and we can actually get something resembling it's only 4 points, but a coarse groundwater contour.
Yep.
would be incredibly helpful.
We're all on the same page. That's why when we sat down to look at this, we thought, well, the fact that we're not on a datum, we can't plot the groundwater. We can't get flow directions. I mean, I think I know where they're going, but it'd be real nice to verify it.
any other commissioners have any other comments or wish list items? Okay, with that, we thank you for coming in and look forward to continued discussions with your results.
Great. Thank you for your time. And I think this is a good program. I'm actually pretty interested in it. So
Awesome.
let's just hope it goes in the right direction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. The 8:30 is not going to have a hearing this night. I would like to jump back to administrative discussions. We are now on a third item, 15 Douglas Road update. So Amy, jumping back to you.
That was just a quick update. That was an enforcement order with a notice of intent. The guy who was building the patio behind his house up in K. And he is close to done and will report in, and I'll do a site walk once it's all wrapped up.
Okay. Would you like to carry on with the 204-319 partial certificate of compliance for 8 Surrey Road? And then we mentioned a full certificate for 8 Surrey on DEP 204-528, and then 539 as well for a partial.
Those are all actually 18 Surrey Road. That was a typo in there, but you can tell by the numbers, this was done a long time ago. 2 of them were from the original development and they never got their certificate of compliance. So every now and then a house shows up for a partial. It's the particular property is all stabilized. So I think all 3 of these, the one full, which had just to do with the house, and the 2 partials are good to go.
Okay.
And I think you can probably do it as one vote if you're so inclined.
You have 1 full and 2 partials.
Yes.
I would make the suggestion that we do the full as one motion and the partials as another.
Works for me.
Anybody up for making the motion?
Move that we issue a full certificate of compliance for 18 Surrey Road, Mass DEP file number 204-528.
Second.
Second. All right. Roll call. I wasn't sure if you were suggesting a second, Sarah, or actually seconding.
Jumping right in, I'll second.
All right, perfect. Roll call vote. Chase.
Chase Carvey, aye.
Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
All right, and myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, do we have another motion for the partials?
I will move that we issue partial certificates of compliance for 18 Surrey Road, Mass DEP file numbers 204-319 and 204-391.
I second.
All right.
That's 8 Surrey Road, not 18.
It is 18 Surrey Road, right, Chase?
It is 18.
Yeah.
There was a typo on the agenda.
Amy said it was.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. My bad.
Wait up.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Chase.
Chase Carvey.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to jump into just 2 quick, Amy, if you want to give our Clean Lakes update regarding Long Lake.
Yep, just let you know that they'll be doing the treatment of Long Lake tomorrow, actually. Just an FYI.
Okay, and then the other is a notification of a spill on 495.
Yeah, I found out today that there's a spill on Friday on 495, I think south of Route 2 on the northbound side. I'm actually not even sure where it is. So I'm going to meet the consultant out there in the next day or 2 just to see what's going on. I forget how much was spilled, but it was not insignificant, and it did get right into the wetlands, and there's a water body there, or a kind of small flooded ponded area. He did give me the 2 field reports that they've done, which I think I just forwarded on to Chase, not everybody. And it was a forest or wetland. They're going to have to go in there and do some soil removal. So we got some discussion to go.
Do you know what the contaminant was?
I think it was just fuel and what they said was other liquids. So I'm not sure what the other liquids is.
That's one of my big questions right now. What the hell does other liquids mean?
Yeah.
Hopefully it was just the coffee from the cab of the truck or something. So.
Oh, jeez.
It covers it all, yeah.
Was this the truck that flipped over a couple days ago?
It was on Friday, apparently, yeah.
The 13th.
Oh. Oof.
Oh, yeah.
Good. All right. Thank you for those updates. Okay, let's go ahead and jump to.
Sarah, one thing, Amy, could we call them in to come in our meeting in 2 weeks, just to understand the status, what's going on? I'd love to have an update on that.
Yep.
From them. I don't expect you to run into ground.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Let's open up informal discussion posted at 8:45 Littleton Water Department regarding Cobb's Pond conservation restrictions. I'm not sure if there's anyone here to speak to that. Corey? Looks
yes. Hi. How are you all?
Thank you.
Good. Looks like Andrew has his hand up there.
Yeah, Sarah, I was just going to say before we get started, I'll just recuse myself from this because my brother, again, works for the water department. So I'm going to hide in the shadows.
And actually, did you talk to anybody about that, Andrew? Because I talked to Diane and she said, since your brother has no financial interest in this, then it's really not a issue.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll.
Okay, Andrew, if you have a question, feel free to jump in. Question or comment. Corey, you have the floor.
All right. Well, thank you all. I'm here tonight with Ivrea Freed from Yaris and Harrington, so that she can help answer any questions you all might have. But before we jump in, I did just want to give the quick background again for those that might not be as familiar as many of you are with the Cobb's Wells project. So it's been a little over 20 years that the water department's been investigating a source of public water supply in a bedrock aquifer around Cobb's Pond. Been a lot of testing done there, gone through a lot of permitting over the past 5 years. We're nearly complete with the permitting process with Mass DEP. They're going to be issuing a draft Water Management Act withdrawal permit literally any day now or any week now. So that's the biggest hurdle to overcome in the process. The next steps will be for us to design and get the actual construction permitted through Mass DEP, as well as you folks and other entities as well. But before Mass DEP would grant that next permit, they need us to resolve some issues with the land ownership and conservation restrictions in the area. As many of you are aware, there's several overlapping conservation restrictions that make it quite complicated, and we've been trying to work through that for the past year or two. And Ivrea has been doing a great job lately helping us through that and really sort of boiled it down, and I think as simple as it can be. And we're hoping to sort of present to you tonight what our proposal is in terms of amending the existing conservation restrictions so that they can be compatible with Mass DEP's requirements for Zone 1 aquifer protection areas. And the Zone 1, just for those that aren't familiar, that really just means the 400-foot radius around any public water supply well. It's just considered a priority protection area, and the water department is required to either own or substantially control that area to ensure that no inconsistent land uses or activities are happening there. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if you don't mind. Let's bring up a map or a plan of the area. All right, so if everyone can see that, Cobb's Pond is right in the center. The pond itself represents a parcel identified as parcel B. And then surrounding that, we have lot 9, just to the sort of northwest of Cobb's Pond. That's owned by the town. Parcel D to the west of the pond, that's owned by the Littleton Conservation Trust. Lots 10 and 11 are also owned by the town. That's actually where the 3 bedrock wells are located. Those, we've already installed those wells and conducted extensive pump testing on them. And then lots 13 and 14 are the other 2 parcels that would be affected. So we're talking parcel B, which is the pond, lot 9 owned by the town, parcel D owned by the Conservation Trust, lots 10 and 11 owned by the town, and then lots 13 and 14, which are owned by private homeowners. So those are sort of the parcels that are affected. And then there's several conservation restrictions, as I mentioned, that sort of overlap and affect these parcels in different ways. But there's really three, I guess, of the most important, and for our purposes anyways, conservation restrictions that need to be amended in order to adequately protect the zone 1. And so let me see if I can, if I switch sheets here, do you see this new plan now, or did that not change for you? You did see it? Okay. So this is the same set of lots, it's just a different view. And you can actually see the zone 1 areas I'm talking about now. So the long dash circles, they're sort of, those circles themselves are overlapping. So you see sort of, 3 overlapping circles there. That encompasses the entire zone 1 area. So you can see how it affects portions of the different parcels I was just talking about. Much of that area is wetland anyways, and so it's already protected by statute, but we're still required to, the water department is still required by Mass DEP to have control over that area. So essentially what I'm hoping to do is sort of describe as clearly as I can anyways, the proposed amendments to each of the 3 conservation restrictions that we are proposing to amend. And then luckily Ivry is here to correct me when I'm wrong and to jump into more details as needed and answer any questions that folks might have. So I'll jump right into the 3 conservation restrictions. The first one is everyone who's been involved in this process refers to as the primary conservation restriction. And I think that's just because it was the first in the area, the first one that was established. It was granted in 2002 by the then owners of what was lots 1 through 17. So the entire area really here was granted by the owners at the time, which were the Emily B. Cobb Trust. The grantee was the Littleton Conservation Trust, still is. And the proposed amendment, although that primary CR covers 17 lots, the proposed amendment only impacts the owners of lots 9, 10, 11, which is the Town of Littleton Conservation Commission, and then 13 and 14, which are the 2 private homeowners I mentioned earlier. And essentially the changes we're proposing there are naming the Town of Littleton's water department as an additional grantee. So the Conservation Trust would remain as a grantee as they are now. We would just be adding the water department as an additional. And the additional changes to the primary CR really only impact those areas of those lots that are within the zone 1. So that plan that I showed you with the zone 1, it doesn't cover the entire parcel. So the amendments, the proposed changes that we're discussing would only affect the portion within the zone 1. And the water department would then have no rights or control of areas outside of that zone 1. And then there's a list of permitted activities, which I don't want to read through because it's long, it would take a while, but what it all really boils down to basically is that the only permitted activities within the zone 1 would be those that are directly related to protection or provision of public water supply. With the exception of outdoor passive recreation, that's typically allowed within zone 1 areas, and it would be allowed here. So that includes things like, hiking through the area, the types of passive recreation that really have no impact at all. And then prohibited uses are essentially all uses not specified as a permitted use in the CR. So anything that's not directly related to the protection or provision of public water supply. Obviously no storage of hazardous materials, vehicles, anything like that. A lot of these things are already prohibited by the existing conservation restriction, but it just, for Mass DEP's purposes, for permitting a new public water supply source, they want to be absolutely certain that it's protected and that the water department has the authority to enforce the restrictions. So it needs to be spelled out very clearly. And so both the LCT, the existing grantee, and the water department, the additionally named grantee, would have the ability to bring an enforcement action for any violation occurring within the Zone 1 area. And then, like I said earlier, outside the zone area, outside the Zone 1 area would be outside of the water department's jurisdiction, then just be under it would be up to the conservation trusts in any of those areas to bring any kind of enforcement action. So for this one, we would additionally be looking for an access easement for accessing the Zone 1 area through any of these affected parcels, and the ability to install monitoring wells if needed. That's typical for Zone 1 areas. There's usually dozens of monitoring wells in those areas just to measure the water quality in the groundwater, that's being drawn into the public water supply well. So I think that's the summary of what we're looking at for the changes to the primary conservation restriction. I don't know, Avery, if I missed anything or anything that needs to be clarified there.
The only point, Corey, that was great. The only point of clarification is that the access easement over lots 13 and lot 14, the lots owned by the private parties, is narrower than the access easement that we are seeking to obtain over lots 9, 10, and 11. And we spent a lot of time talking about this with DEP, and we really wanted to limit the intrusion onto those private parties' land. So in the case of lots 13 and 14, the town can only construct and operate monitoring wells. On lots 9, 10, and 11, they can construct additional infrastructure as permitted by the Massachusetts Drinking Water Regulations Act. So that would include monitoring wells and other necessary infrastructure for the operation of a public water supply. So it's a little bit broader, but you covered everything else perfectly, Corey.
Great.
So if we can, let's kind of keep on this focus first. So, and coming back to council's comments on that. So in that language, I'm assuming they can build outbuildings, different pumping stations, storage with that language, anything that pertains to water quality, which is
correct,
which is not permitted now. What is the difference in pathways from access road 13, 14 to now 9, 10, 11? What's the variation?
So if I'm understanding your question, why the distinction between 9, 10, and 11 and 13 and 14?
How much of are we also speaking the manner of the width of the road for 13 and 14?
So there will be no road on 13 and 14. We're not going to be creating any pathways. It just gives us the right to go onto their property. And so my guess, and Corey's, correct me if I'm wrong, but to the extent we do have to put in any type of monitoring well, we will access it on foot, managing the wetlands.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. I have another question. So is the language of the CR changing at all?
It is changing. It's changing. So we have prepared draft amendments. We've been working with the state on finalizing the language. So we wanted to have this meeting here tonight, sort of preface everything, and then we're happy to start circulating drafts amongst LCT, the Conscom, and Cobb's Pond Homeowners Association and the private parties who own lot 13 and lot 14. So, I think as Corey is going to speak to, there are additional conservation restrictions at play here. There's a CR over parcel D and a CR over parcel B. Parcel B is essentially the water body. So those amendments are also at play here.
Okay. My quick question is pertaining to passive recreation. As I was part of this over 2 decades ago when the Cobbs worked with this, and also Landvest and Richard Perkins have put a lot of time in there. Are horses being excluded or included in the language under passive recreation?
So my understanding is that they're still being permitted. There may be signage that's going to be clear about that. But Corey, my understanding is that it is staying.
Yeah, that was something we discussed with the state. to get more clarification on their definition of passive recreation. And
That was part of the COB's intent, was to make sure that was included as passive.
yeah, I think the state's only comment was as long as the horses are only traveling through and not, being boarded there in any way or anything like that, then they were fine with it.
Do you know if we're relying on state definition of passive outdoor recreation, or are we developing our own definition?
So oh, sorry, go ahead, Corey.
I was just going to say the DEP does have a definition of passive recreation in their Zone 1 regulations. So that's what we're going off of, but it did not specifically address horses, and that's where we had to ask in that meeting that we had with the state.
Right. And to go off of that point, it will be memorialized in the terms of the conservation restriction as well. So that will be the governing document for the passive use.
Part of that discussion, we obviously don't have to get into it now, is bikes, but electric bikes is part of
yes.
This discussion on that. If we can ask commissioners if anyone has any questions specific to this outline of comments right now.
I do have one question here. If on lots 13 and 14, we're restricting the installation of monitoring wells to, for lack of a better term right now, low impact approaches, why not apply that on the rest of this as well? In other words, if it's feasible to install a monitoring well there without installing a road to the well and so on, I'm not sure why we would go about doing that elsewhere.
So that's a good question. I think the reason that DEP was willing to allow us to kind of take a reduced access easement over lots 13 and 14 was because they felt comfortable that any issues that arose that needed to be remediated in regards to the water quality, we could cite those facilities on lots 9, 10, and 11 because the town had control of it. So I think the support for just seeking an access easement for monitoring wells over the private party's property was the fact that we could do it on ours. And it's not something, frankly, we raised with them, Corey. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I mean, the only other thing I would add, and if you can see the other plan that I just brought up on the screen, this actually shows the Zone 1 areas in like a light gray, but then it also shows the extent of the wetlands. And so if you're looking at lots 13 and 14, the Zone 1 area that we're seeking a restriction on for lots 13 and 14 are 100% covered in wetlands. So, like I said earlier, like there's literally nothing we can do there. Even a public water supplier can't just fill wetlands, so there's really no need for the restriction here other than Mass DEP wanting it to be abundantly clear that the water department controls that area, even though it's already statutorily protected by the Wetlands Protection Act. And it's highly unlikely we would ever install monitoring wells there at all. And if we did, it would be, with some kind of, the small like geoprobe rigs, which is what you would probably use in any other area anyways, but that would be the only really feasible option in the wetland area if you really needed to install a monitoring well there.
And that's essentially where I was going. I understand what you're saying about in terms of being able to install treatment buildings and so on. I was specifically talking in the context of monitoring wells. I guess what I wouldn't want to see is, because the language allowed it, installing a roadway to a monitoring well when we could use a little more time and effort and just install monitoring wells elsewhere with limited impact equipment. Yes, someone's going to have to walk out to the well instead of potentially drive out to it, but I don't want the language to allow that when we could install it with a much lower impact. And I'm talking specifically in the context of monitoring wells, not any treatment infrastructure or something like
Got
that.
it.
I think those are two different things.
Sorry, I do have someone with a hand up. Christine Nordhaus.
Okay. Let's see, any other commissioners? We will get to that. I just want to make sure if there's any other commissioners that have any questions for council or Mr. Godfrey. Okay. Awesome. Christine, if you'd like to introduce yourself and state where you reside.
Hi, I'm Christine Nordhaus. I live on Star Hill. I'm a trustee of the Littleton Conservation Trust. I just had a question about the access easement on lots 9, 10, and 11, which the trust holds the CR on. Will there be any description in the amendment as to the size, scope, scale, whatever of this of the treatment infrastructure?
That's something that
Go ahead.
Yes. So that's something, Christine, that I think that the town is willing to have a conversation with LCT and the state about. Right now, we're being given the language by Mass DEP to make sure that we're complying with their Zone 1 regulations. So to the extent that LCT wants to suggest alternative language, we're more than happy to have that conversation and to facilitate the discussion amongst all the relevant parties.
Great, thank you. The reason for the question, I think the concern is, looking down the road maybe to the giant reservoir across the street from this and the scale of the water treatment facility, maybe outsized for Cobb Pond only, and it may not be, but it's just a question that we're, looking at. But yeah, we can have that conversation.
Great. Christine, can I ask that if you do have specific questions to also email them directly to Light and Water Department as well, just because this is still an informal discussion. So
sure, absolutely.
Make sure that those carry forward from this discussion.
Sure.
Anyone else have any other questions?
I'd like to follow up on that with a clarifying question. So does the current language that the water department is working on, would it allow treatment infrastructure on lots 10 and 11 that treat water that come from anywhere other than the 3 wells that are being installed?
So I'd have to look at DEP's regulations. I don't know off the top of my head, but my memory is that if you are installing a treatment plant within a Zone 1, that treatment plant needs to pertain to water coming from wells within the Zone 1. So the answer to your question would be no, but I can confirm that, look at the regulations, and make sure. I understand your concern that other water is being pumped from wells offsite, being brought here to be treated. I think the regulations address that, but I can look into that.
Thank you.
Corey, do you know the answer to that question?
I don't know the answer as far as what the regulations say about it. All I know is it's not our intention to do that, but 30 years from now, there'll be other people with other intentions. So it'd be best for us to figure out what the regulations say.
So Corey, do you have a second part of this discussion as well?
I was just going to present the proposed amendments to the 2 other conservation restrictions, if you'd like.
Surely.
Okay. All right, so the second conservation restriction we'd be proposing to amend would be on parcel B, which, going back to that first map, parcel B is Cobb's Pond itself, the water body. And so currently the owner of that parcel is Cobb Pond Associates, and the grantee of the CR is the Littleton Conservation Trust. And similar to the last one we discussed, the amendment would name the Littleton Water Department as an additional grantee, keeping the Conservation Trust as a grantee as well. What's a little bit different about this amendment is that it would not only cover the Zone 1 area of parcel B, but the entirety of parcel B. And the reason for that is that it is a water body, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to draw arbitrary lines in the middle of water bodies. Water flows any which way. Makes sense for us to be able to essentially bring enforcement on any kind of prohibited activity on the water body as a whole. And again, really the only activities that would be permitted would be those directly related to public water supply provision and protection. Passive recreation again would be allowed, so like, you know, kayaking or canoeing, that sort of thing. Anything other than that essentially would be prohibited. Anything that's not named as a permitted use. And again, the LCT or the water department could bring an enforcement action for a violation occurring anywhere on this parcel, which again is a little bit different than the other two amendments, which only pertain to the Zone 1 areas of the parcel. That's the quick summary of that one. And then the third.
Before we move on from
Sure.
this one, Corey, and actually it might be a question more for Ivrea, but in the context of two grantees, help me understand what would happen if there was a disagreement between the grantees of whether or not to bring an enforcement action. Can a single party bring it, or do both parties have to agree before it can be brought?
That's a great question, Chase. So typically, the way that the state likes to see their conservation restrictions drafted with two grantees is that there's a primary grantee and a secondary grantee, and that ultimately it's the primary grantee's decision whether to move forward or not with an enforcement action. In this case, we really felt that we wanted dual authority, that both the LCT and the water department should be able to have independent authority to enforce the restriction, because what matters to the water department might be different than what matters to LCT and vice versa. And so I recognize the fact that there could be a situation where the water department doesn't want to move forward with an enforcement action and LCT does, for example. In that case, we're drafting it to specifically allow LCT to move forward. And in the case where the water department wants to move forward and LCT doesn't, then the water department could move forward. It could potentially create some points of tension. So we're hopeful that in the future, LCT, before all of this is executed, that LCT and the water department and the state are all able to sit down around a table and kind of discuss this in a bit more detail, because it is unique, but we don't want to strip LCT of their ability to bring an enforcement action if they want to. And I did just want to make one addition to what Corey said about his description here. Everything he said is correct. I just want to add that there's also going to be an access easement. This access easement will only extend over the Zone 1. So while the water department will have the ability to bring an enforcement action over the entirety of Parcel B, the access easement is restricted to just the Zone 1, and it contains the ability to do monitoring wells and other necessary infrastructure for water supply purposes.
If I can, Sarah, do you know, is the access road to Lot 4 and the control structure outside of Parcel B?
Yes, it is.
Sorry, just to clarify. So Lot 4 definitely is. What is the control structure?
It's under the driveway, basically.
Oh, okay.
The outlet.
Yes.
To it. And what, especially on lots 9, 10, 11, if there's a disagreement between LCT and LWD about where a trail might go. So it's not an enforcement issue. It's a what's permitted issue. If they're kind of equal partners.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So that's something maybe we can look at, Corey. I guess my initial thought is that the location of trails can still be controlled by LCT. But that's something we should talk with the state about as well.
Yeah. And I'll just mention here is probably a good time to mention that, we are planning to meet separately with the LCT sometime in the next few weeks to month or so. And similarly with Cobb Bond Associates and the two private homeowners. So we'll be having more detailed discussions with each party and sort of dive into some more of those details as far as trail locations and that sort of thing.
Okay. And if you want to, we've got to keep this going. So I know that there's another section of discussion that you'd like to present to us, but Amy, if you have a question, go ahead.
Just one more quick one on Cobb's Pond. If I remember right, I think I got approached by someone from the association about either some sort of treatment for the invasive species in the aquatics in Cobb's Pond? Is there any allowance for either mechanical or, God help you, chemical applications in there, or any thought to that?
I would have to check about the mechanical. My memory is that chemicals will not be allowed.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something just going forward to put on the list of discussions. All right, Corey, I'm going to give you just a few more minutes.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'll just finish up quickly. So parcel D is the remaining one we're talking about. That's the one owned by the Conservation Trust, and the Conservation Commission is the grantee of the easement. So similar to the others, the amendment would name the Littleton Water Department as an additional grantee. Changes would only apply to the Zone 1 area of parcel D. And similar types of permitted and not permitted uses, passive recreation, and things related to provision and protection of water supply. Again, the Conservation Commission and the Water Department would have enforcement authority within the Zone 1 area. The Conservation Commission alone would have enforcement authority outside of it. And again, there would be an access easement, which would include the ability to install, maintain, and operate wells and associated infrastructure. Let's see what else. Is there anything else I missed on that one, Andrea?
That's a great summary, Corey.
So yeah, as a very quick summary of what we're proposing, those are sort of the highlights. And this was obviously just an introductory presentation on that, and we would be back at some point in the future for additional discussions and an eventual vote from the commission. These will have to go to the town meeting for approval in the fall. Is what we're aiming for.
So I think, Corey, when you are at the point to submit your draft review of any language, please just send it on to Amy when you're ready for us to have another discussion and offer any kind of feedback as well. Any commissioners have any other presentation for the questions for the water department? We appreciate you coming in tonight, and wish you good luck with your discussions with LCT and DEP.
Sorry, I'm going to jump. I know you're trying to move this on. I apologize. To the extent that we've got language in there about installing infrastructure, again, my 2 cents is I'd love to see some qualifier on that about the least, using the least impactful methods feasible, or something like that, that requires you to justify what you're doing and make it as minimally impactful as possible without robbing of the water department of the important ability to protect the water supply. Some balance language. I don't know exactly what that might look like, but that might be something that I'll pay attention to next time we come.
And I think once we start to see language, we can go through and kind of add suggestions to that as well.
Okay. Keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you all.
Let's go ahead. 9 o'clock, Cooper Farm basin discussion. Continuation of enforcement order. Anyone here to talk? I know that Amy's gone back and forth through email. I think the commission was sent some in terms of what's being done. Action plan that was submitted April 28th. Amy, do you want to just give us an update, perhaps? Although what was referenced in some of our attachments.
So I don't really have an update. The enforcement order asked them to come in with the action plan tonight. And I did have some back and forth about that. Matthew Field asked for a continuance, and I basically said this is an enforcement order, so the commission would be having a discussion about this, whether they were present or not. And they did subsequently say they have plugged the basin, so there's no more water going out of it. Michael Fields, I was reported to have regraded the trail where the erosion was happening below the outlet. I heard that today. I have not been able to get out there and see it. And they are working on going ahead and dewatering one of the basins and trying to pull out the construction sediment that may have clogged it. And that's where we were.
Commissioners, questions on this? Comments? I'm not sure if anyone, I know people had been out to walk the basin.
I'd just be curious to see what it looks like after a heavy day of rain we got yesterday. If if it's infiltrating, if it's actually storing water. But I couldn't get out there today myself either.
So they have a rotor company coming in, or drilling company to trying to figure out if there's a clog there.
I think they're gonna. I'm not entirely sure, and I can't represent what they were saying. I mean, it's been a little bit different. It's just been by email. I haven't gotten anything submitted, in paper copies, anything like that. So I don't want to second guess what they're doing. I did remind them also that we need an as-built and an engineer certification that the basins are working as designed.
So I think just for the commission to understand what has been submitted to date.
Emails saying that they plugged up the basin.
Okay.
And I went out and saw that was in fact the case. And an email, which I think I distributed, which came in, I don't know, later this afternoon, with that sort of action plan of doing the plug that Michael had done, the regrading of the pathway, and that they are having contractors come in to maintain and clean some of the system. They didn't have a total date on that because it's weather dependent on the cleaning and O&M.
Okay, commissioners have thoughts on this? I think we're a little disappointed that no one's here to address some of our questions. I think it boils down to the extent to which the basins are working efficiently.
I do have a question since we have counsel here. The overall, the process for beginning to levy fines as part of the enforcement order, Ivrea, can you talk us through how that could go from here on out with the applicant if we are not satisfied with the resolution of the enforcement order?
Sure. So you have two options. The first option is to seek enforcement under the Wetlands Protection Act, and the second option is to seek enforcement of your town bylaw. My understanding is that the violation is of both the Wetland Protection Act and your local bylaw here. So under the Wetlands Protection Act, the DEP can initiate a criminal complaint. And so that's something that you could reach out to DEP and start discussions with. The other option under the Wetlands Protection Act is a civil penalty, which would require a filing in court. That is, you as a Conservation Commission are able to bring that, but generally we see that being brought by the state. So the better or the more frequently utilized course of action is through your town bylaw. And again, you have two options there. You could file a criminal complaint that is initiated at the local police department level and then is prosecuted usually by town council as a special prosecutor and the ADA. And the second option is through 21D process. And I'm not sure how many of the commissioners are familiar with that, but basically it is essentially a ticket that you would issue in accordance with your bylaw. And your bylaw outlines the specific fines. The individual who is ticketed has 21 days to either pay it or they can appeal it to district court. So your bylaw, let me just pull it up, in section 171-8E says that if you're going to do the 21D process, the first offense is $25, second offense is $100, and the third and subsequent offense is $300. And each day can be considered a separate offense, generally, under your 21D process. So your bylaw also says that the commission is the body authorized to issue a ticket. So in many conservation commissions, delegate that authority to a Conscom agent, either through their bylaw or through their regulations. So where you haven't done that, this board would have to vote to either empower Amy to do that or to direct Amy to issue a specific ticket. In this case, they are in violation of your local bylaw. They're also in violation of the order. My understanding is that the order required them to produce a plan today, which they haven't done. So there are things that you could look towards if you did want to start the ticketing process.
Thank you.
Sarah, I think you might
Sarah,
be
you're
muted. I see, yeah.
Sorry about that. Why I didn't get an answer. I was trying to write down some notes. So you referenced 2 points. One was that they were supposed to produce a plan, but just prior to that, what was the other issue that would allow us to empower to?
So my understanding is that they are in violation, and let me just pull up the enforcement order itself. I think Amy even cited it. They're in violation of specific provisions of their order of conditions, right, Amy?
Well, this, yeah, which included primarily the erosion control, I believe.
Yeah,
I can pull out the actual EO, and I also picked up, it was an attachment to the email that they sent me with the action plan related to the enforcement order that listed out those things, which included the catch basins will be vacuum cleaned later this week. They're going to dewater pond 4 when the ground is dry enough to drive equipment on. And once the pond is dewatered, they're going to remove the silt that's been accumulating that will allow the infiltration.
Yeah, so the enforcement order states that they are in violation of general condition 1819, special condition C9, C12, and C17. So, those could be grounds for potential ticketing under your 21D process. And then to the extent you don't agree that, so, the order says that they had to have filed a restoration plan by May 17th. So it's unclear to me, Amy, whether the information they've submitted is considered a restoration plan or not. I mean, I defer to the commission to make that decision, but to the extent that you believe they have not produced such a plan, a ticket potentially could be appropriate in that case as well.
I would say my 2 cents is the plan they put forward is not particularly good, but it is a plan. It is something that I guess I would not want to test the waters on whether or not this is a plan that is insufficient enough to warrant it. That seems like a poor hill to die on.
It is a plan.
It is a plan. Right. Amy, could you remind us what general conditions 1819 and specifics 9, 12, and 17 are?
No. I don't have those in front of me.
Okay.
And they aren't on the
We can circulate those a little bit later.
Yeah.
And you don't have them memorized?
No.
You might want to commit these ones to memory.
Your pictures are over there, which is why I'm not looking at the camera. So
Okay, so let's kind of come back to center here. What is the pleasure of the commission? What would you like to do? Status quo, kind of hope everything gets fixed. Do you want to do a 21D? Ask them again to come in on June 7th. I'm unclear what has happened. I know that we have plugged, sealed the outlet pipe on on 3. I don't know what's been done for cleanup of what has happened down gradient of that.
Yeah, because all I say is they regraded the walking path. But there's more than.
Right, there was more than, based on the photographs and the experience that I think commissioners have had on site, there's also regrading was going to be insufficient, that they really need to pull back and clean what had traveled into the wetlands, or which would be by hand.
So I personally would start the ticketing.
Yeah,
because
so look at these, and Carl, you probably know these photos better than many, that a lot of this is not cleaned by grading. And I would hope that equipment did not go in some of those resource areas for grading.
Could we empower Amy to issue a ticket after she's inspected the status of the cleanup? I'm a little hesitant to issue it without us having looked at it, but I also don't want to begin to issue tickets 2 weeks from now. So if the choice is either today or 2 weeks from now, I'm totally aligned with Carl. If we could give Amy the ability to issue that ticket after she's had a chance to inspect it, I would.
Right. I think that you can grant her the ability to do so, and then also ask that she confer with, at minimum, 2, 1 or 2 commissioners that can also go out on site. Historically, when we do even enforcement orders, 1 person can do it, but it's nice to have 2 or 3.
Carl, do you think you could live with that middle ground? Instead of turning it on today, we give Amy the ability to turn it on after inspection?
Yes, I would be okay with that. I would like to see some action on a plan be a little bit more official type of plan. It seems like it's just, I'm getting the sense that they're kind of like doing these little things, like plugging up and then going in and trying to router the pipe to see. It just seems like they're kind of willy-nilly trying to figure this out, as opposed to actually having an engineer or someone go out and actually figure out what the problem is, and putting the problem on paper and submitting a plan to us.
Yep. And when there's a restoration plan, progress has to be, you need to come into the commission, show photographs, and show your updates, which has not been provided this evening in terms of photographs as well. So, council, can we do that? Can we give her the authority to now, or does it have to be immediate?
No, you can give her the authority to issue 21D tickets relative to the Cooper Farm parcel. I would caution against requiring her to consult with any particular Conscom members because of the open meeting law. I don't want to inadvertently create subcommittees. So I think the discretion should be Amy's as to whether or not she feels it necessary to reach out to Conscom members to issue tickets under Section 21B.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Is there a commissioner that would like to make a motion for that?
Move to authorize a conservation agent to issue 21D tickets relative to the Cooper Farm parcel.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Carl is the second. Roll call.
All right, roll call vote. Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Chase.
Chase Kerwig, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
And just to be clear, what am I looking for?
Yep,
Any unstabilized areas?
I think check in with this. Anything that is unstable, areas that have not been stabilized, and also to look where erosion has veered into a resource area, if that's been hand resolved.
Got it.
Commissioners, anyone else want to add to that? They certainly have experience on that property. Doing such in terms of cleanup and removal.
And then if I can just touch base with you tomorrow, Avery, about the actual filling out and the distribution of it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Let's move on to 9:15, continued public hearing, notice of intent, 107 Mattawanakie, DEP, let's see, it's 204-921, construction of a single family house and septic system. Anyone here to talk to us?
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chair. Matt Morrow here representing Peter Scott.
Yep. Matt, can you speak up a little bit? We can barely hear you.
Okay, how about now?
Perfect.
Okay, I apologize. My microphone for some reason is kicking in and out tonight. I'll try to make sure. If you can't hear me, just let me know at any time.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, Amy, am I allowed to share screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, what we have is a notice of intent for the construction of a 3-bedroom, single-family home on a pre-existing lot at 107 Mattawanakie Road. My client, Peter Scott, has had this particular parcel in his family for the last 4 generations. It's a lot that's pre-existing that predates the enactment of your local regulations and the regulations in their current form. Currently, what we have is a proposal for the construction of a single-family home here, cantilever deck. You have your 50-foot zone here, your 100-foot zone here. Septic system is proposed to go right in the front of the lot based on Ted Doucette's design. So the prior issues with the lot with regard to Title V was the offset to the abutter's well. And my client informs me that he's come to agreement with the abutter. The abutter is going to abandon his well, and Peter is going to pay for the installation of town water, basically eliminating that issue. My client is looking to do town water here. The assertion here is that because this is a pre-existing lot, we have, essentially confined spaces to build on in relation to getting a conventional sized house in here with a septic system. Not allowing a waiver under the bylaw could constitute a land taking. And my client's willing to do whatever forms of mitigation, aside from the erosion protection that's already proposed in here and necessary, is willing to work with the commission on any plantings that you guys may desire to, offset any environmental impacts. And that's basically it at the moment. And we're open for discussion at this point.
Has this plan changed since the meeting 2 weeks ago?
The only change is in the respect with the situation regarding the offset to well to cure the Title V issue.
2 quick things, Matt. Color code, your green lines, please match what's defined for the town. And also, you mentioned in your narrative a conventional house size. Can you define that for the commission? Are we talking 2-bedroom, 4-bedroom?
This is a 3-bedroom, single-family home.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how much discussion I'm prepared for tonight. I would like to schedule a site walk to take a look at it.
Okay.
If the applicant is amenable to that.
Yep.
You want to walk the site?
But yes.
What if the commission is allowed to walk the site? What would you like the applicant to have staked for that? Matt, when was this flagged?
I didn't flag it, so I don't know when it was flagged. I was brought in at the tail end of it.
Says October 2020.
Or do all the flags exist, Matt?
I did see flags on site. I can go
Sorry,
back
your
and make sure that they're-
audio, Matt, your audio is going out again.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Okay, so I did see flags on site, but I will go back out and make sure before any site walk that the flags are renewed so that you have a fresh flagging to look at.
Okay, so these are not your flags.
No, these weren't my flags.
Okay. Amy, have we ever been out and asked to do a delineation?
No.
Okay. So that would be a starting point, Matt, because you're going to be reflective of those flags.
Yeah, I can verify the delineation on site. That's not a problem.
Okay. And then that would have to be plotted with yours on that as well. Commissioners, what would you like when Matt's doing that? What would you like for him to stake out?
I'd like to see essentially everything here, right? Corners of the deck, corners of the house, probably the corners of the septic. And I would say some markers to delineate the extent of work where the proposed water line or erosion controls is specified. It would also be helpful to know where the property lines are when we're out there, given the narrowness of this.
Right, because I see setbacks on the side. Are there many variances that are being requested for Board of Health?
Well, there would have to be, I believe the Board of Health has a 100-foot
Sorry,
buffer zone line.
breaking up.
Okay, how about now? I'm sorry, I got
No, that's okay. You're good. We can hear you now.
Yep.
Okay, so the Board of Health does have a 100-foot buffer zone variance that would have to be sought because you have some of the system, some of the leach field is within the buffer zone as noted on the plan. We can, check that out while we're out there. You can take a look at it. You can take a look at the wetland line. You can take a look at the site, topography, existing conditions, potential remedial work, the remedial plantings. This is all stuff we can talk about on site.
Okay, and I know the commissioners will probably bring up on site as well the waiver implications. These topo lines, are these your survey lines?
These are Mr. Doucette's survey lines. Yes.
Thank you.
I would also, any discussion of the waiver should happen here and not on the site, other than just asking questions.
Yep, meaning that other, yep, exactly. Would you like to talk to the point of the waiver now, Matt?
Okay, so essentially the point of the waiver is under your bylaw as cited in the waiver. This case is actually a case, in my opinion, that provision on your waivers was written for. You have a pre-existing lot. You have the ability, it's basically listed as a single family lot. The denial of an order of conditions to build on this property could constitute a land taking, and your bylaw has waiver provisions designed to avoid a land taking. So what we're looking to do is work with the commission to be able to build the house under a waiver provision and do whatever mitigation that you guys would look for to maybe enhance the environmental protection of the receiving water, which would be the pond on this property. I think it's something that's quite possible. I think it's something that would be quite easy to do, and I think it's something we could all be creative on and allow for a taking not to take place.
Do I understand you meant what you're doing is essentially asking us for what those mitigation measures should be? I haven't seen anything that's really specified.
I can propose them, but I would like to walk the site to show you what's out there so we can talk more. No, I don't want you guys to try to picture this in your head. I want somebody to lay eyeballs on it so that when we talk, we can talk with some common point of reference that we've seen and not just something that's on a two-dimensional plan. And it's something we've done in the past, and I think it's something we've done quite successfully. And I think we can do it here as well.
Okay.
I'm not asking the commission to design it for me. I simply want the commission to look over the territory so that I can come up with some type of mitigation for you guys.
Okay, and that was the point that I wanted to make sure was clear, is that we're not going to suggest it. We're going to leave that to you and your client to come up with a plan there, and we will work with you on that plan rather than us telling you what it needs to be.
No, absolutely. I'm absolutely happy to do that.
Commissioners have any other questions or requests for information to be plotted for the sidewalk?
Sarah, I do have a question for council if we can engage Ms. Freed before we wrap up this topic.
Okay, feel free.
Go ahead. Okay. I'd like to know if we can direct Amy to work with town council's office to help us understand the definition of a taking. What constitutes a taking, what does not constitute a taking. And I'm not looking for town council's opinion on that in real time necessarily. I imagine some amount of research and due diligence would be necessary, but I would like to understand what that means practically and what the definitions of a taking actually are.
Okay.
Absolutely. And we can prepare something for the commissioner's review, but I do just want to say that, you know, without going through the three prongs of a regulatory taking analysis, the bar is incredibly high. Oh, sorry, cat. The bar is incredibly high. And so we can outline that, but, you know, from first blush, I think it would be very difficult for the applicant to make and defend a regulatory taking argument in front of court. But we're happy to provide the commission with some more information.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
One other thing, Sarah, Matt probably doesn't know this, but the lot I just noticed is the land use code is 132, which is undevelopable. So I don't know why it is.
So Amy, I think we can kind of explore that a little bit more, but I did speak with Chris Heap in my office today about this parcel, and I do believe that it was grandfathered and has obtained approval through the small lots program.
Okay. Thank you. So that's something that Matt and the applicant can verify for the commission. Okay. Any other commissioners have any other questions or comments or?
One last question for the applicant, and that's the status of the septic system and to what degree the Board of Health has reviewed and opined on that septic system.
My understanding that is that it's currently in front of the Board of Health. However, it's on hold until the situation regarding the well is completed. And again, as I had stated earlier, my client has struck a deal with the abutting landowner to abandon his well and install town water as a part of what's proposed here. So in that case, the Title V offset to the abutting well would be eliminated, which was the sticking point.
Understood. Okay. That's all I need right now. Thank you.
So, Matt, as the applicant's engineer, can you let Amy, so we meet again on June 7th. Can you let us know when you have your new wetlands flags out in the field and all your stakes surveyed in? And then
I'll confirm with Amy. I could tell you that the wetlands flags will be out there by the end of the week, and I'll have an update on the staking.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So if there's no other questions, we will move this on to June 7th is our next meeting.
And is the plan, Sarah, to coordinate a site walk once the applicant has?
Correct, because they're not his flags. They would have to be kind
Understood, but we would
And
contemplate
staking.
a site walk between now and the next meeting if the applicant is able to flag and survey? Or we're gonna wait until the next meeting to schedule it? I'm sorry, I just wasn't really clear.
Yep, it's,
It's on them
yeah.
to get the stakes up.
Right, so we have to wait until the stakes and it's freshly flagged as well. So, but Matt can just connect with Amy and then we can see if we can put something in prior to the 7th.
All right, I'll coordinate it.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and jump into the 9:30, which is continued public hearing notice of intent, 22 Woodland Drive. I see, Nick, you are here, and this is Mass DEP 204961. Redevelopment of a single-family home and associated utilities and access. A site visit has occurred. Okay.
Good evening, Nick Pauling, GPR. You mind if I share my screen?
Please do.
So as you mentioned, the couple of site visits were made. This is still the same plan. No revision has been made. Just to give you an update, there are revisions coming, but we just wanted to give you an update and verify the direction that we're moving with the application. So on the second site walk, Amy was available. We coordinated to have Matt there as well. One flag was added. It was between wetland flag 5 and 6. Can everyone see that? I tried to draft it in. It's approximately this purplish line here. It came about 5 to 6 feet off of this straight delineation. We labeled that as wetland flag 5A. Also during that time, because he was on the property and the conversation started with Mr. Rounce, which is this property here that we kicked off the beginning of the meeting talking about. We also went and established, this was the last wetland flag that we hung. Right here is approximately the wetland flag we placed. I named it B1. That was actually the flag that Matt was setting in the picture that Amy actually showed you during the 25 Juniper conversation. Matt is coordinated to finish delineating this resource area coming down this line on Friday. My survey crew will be picking up those wetland flags as well as surveying Mr. Rounce's property that day, so that we'll be able to produce an updated plan showing the full, delineation, as well as during that time, that day, there's some specific things based on the site walks that we want to identify just so that we can make sure that we quantify. The first is the approximate limit of the knotweed that we've all seen on the property, which I believe is, roughly speaking, very thick in this location here. You'll notice that some of that is within the wetland, delineated wetland area, some is upland. So one of the things that we want to do is make sure that the mix of our proposed restoration mix area, which is currently limited here, as that expands into that removed knotweed area, it's appropriate for the area being a buffer zone or a wetland area. And that will also be the case as we move down the southern line to restore where those logs have been fallen. A couple other things that we are working on to prepare in the modification is, one, as mentioned in the previous meeting, the propane tank will be removed. It's no longer needed. And we will also be proposing, just to delineate the limit of work, 400-pound boulders along the proposed limit of work, extending into the Ivy Road right-of-way. We'll leave it up to the commission whether or not every third or every other of those boulders have a marking sign to delineate a resource area behind. We're also looking into the seed mix of the restoration seed mix to make sure that they're include pollinator type planting seeds, flowers, things like that. It's kind of a unique area with wanting to remove one species in the knotweed, but wanting to establish something else. It's a tricky balance that we're trying to finalize or dot the T's and cross the I's on, proverbially. So that's the majority of the things that are coming. We have gone to the Board of Health. The Board of Health did not approve all of our waivers. They were not in favor of the reduction in groundwater, a full 2-foot reduction. We are continued to the next meeting, which is on it's next week, 25th, 24th, 25th, one of those days. We'll be having a conversation with them regarding a 3-foot groundwater reduction rather than a 2, as well as potentially designating or kind of providing a hybrid foundation for the dwelling that will have a crawl space or a slab on grade for a portion of this area here of the dwelling, just to move living space further away from the proposed leaching area. So effects relative to the Conservation Commission, this high point here that's proposed, 251 elevation, with a 3-foot offset to groundwater, that comes up a foot in elevation. And then the slope that from the higher part actually catches up near the proposed tankage. So the limit of work and the limit of grading remains unchanged. Actually, while we're over there, something that was pointed out during the site walk is the tree, the stump of the ash tree that was also previously mentioned earlier tonight. We're going to make sure we survey that. We have a feeling that just the installation of the dosing chamber next to it, that stump will need to be removed. So we want to make sure that we show that and provide the erosion control accordingly. So that is what is coming. I know it's not in front of you now, but we certainly wanted to get the temperature of the board of those revisions and certainly continue the conversation relative to the net benefits to the buffer zone and the wetland area of the development, including not only the proposed structure, but the proposed dock and the waiver that's needed for them.
Nick, there was one other thing that came up when Sarah and Mike and I were out there, which is there was appeared to be some kind of pipe sort of on the southeastern portion of the site you were going to take a look at.
Yep, you are correct. We dug slightly up gradient, and I apologize. It was actually that and the question about the cesspool. One is we dug further up gradient of that pipe. We didn't find anything. The general theory or the thought process is that it might have been kind of a redirection of a downspout. If you remember from the site, this corner of the existing is actually somewhat of a, I know it's going to say funny if remembering the property, but the most recent renovation of the property, where it was kind of an enclosed porch. It seemed very feasible, especially looking at the roof lines, that pipe basically was a farmer's connection to a downspout that just doesn't exist anymore. There's no gutters on that side, so that pipe should easily be removed while we're in that area. We did investigate the manhole cover, which is this circle up here. We found that it is a true cover. There is no internal hole, so it's a 5-foot diameter concrete cover that had lifting hooks on it. We're pretty confident that it's the cesspool. Sean, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get a hold of him today. I haven't tried either, but I didn't follow up with him to see if he has gotten his mini excavator on site to pop it. That's something that we discussed with Amy while we were on site with her, just to verify that there was no pipe outlets to a leaching area or a leaching line or anything like that.
So in your narrative, assuming that it is the cesspool, you'll share with us your means of dissolving of that.
Yeah, so that would be pumped. Any bottom, if present, would be ruptured, and then it would be backfilled with 3/4 or 3" minus stone.
That just needs to be on the plan.
Very good. It actually, there is a call
Okay, thank
right
you.
here. Pump out, rupture bottom, 3" minus.
And it might already be on here, the large tree that is on your property, but also on the neighbor's property that they really want to have stay. It's literally right in where your cursor is. Is that the tree that that you're referencing?
No, so this is the tree that Mr. Rounds referenced that he had cleaned up. There was some damage to it. There's a tree stump here. It was an old ash tree. I believe it's right around this general area. That's the tree stump that I'm referencing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioners have any other questions?
No questions, just to reiterate a comment that made 2 weeks ago, which is it will be very helpful to the commission if the applicants can provide some quantitative metrics in terms of areas that are being protected, reseeded, invasives removed, et cetera. So not just showing them on the plans, but tabulating and quantifying those would be beneficial.
I'm sorry, I don't. So for example, we have 1,600.
Well,
you're actually saying a table, so it's a one-stop review.
Yeah, I mean, you identified here, right, that you take out the knotweed within this area. I just like to know what the actual footprint of that is. What's the footprint of the area that will be outside of the boulders and protected? Quantifying those metrics would be very helpful to us.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody have anything else? We will see you again on June 7th.
Thank you. Amy, would you like to coordinate with Matt to review the new lines coming down the southern property line at some point, or would that be done for Mr. Rounds?
Yeah, you know what? Let me know, Matt, when you think you're going to be out there and how long it might take.
Friday.
Yeah, like what time? And
All right, that I don't know. Sorry.
yeah, and maybe half an hour or so into it, I can come out and see what you got. Depending, Fridays, I usually don't work on Fridays, so I'm not sure what else I got scheduled, but let me know the times and we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, moving along, 9:45 continued public hearing notice of intent 331 Goldsmith Street. I believe they have a DEP number now. I just don't have it here. Mass DEP 204-09, construction of a garage and after the fact permitting for fill and grading in the buffer zone, subject to an enforcement order from August 2021. Okay, who would like to speak?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Matt Morrow again. I'm here for the continuation of the previous meetings that we've had on this particular issue. We were waiting for the DEP file number. We finally did get it. It was Judy Schmidt that actually provided the number. So that issue is all set. I don't recall seeing any comments on her issuance of the number under the state regulation. And Amy, I'm assuming I can still share my screen.
Please.
So per the commission's wishes, I added the areas in the graded restoration section where there will be the shrubs planted. So essentially what was proposed in the planting plan were elderberry, highbush blueberry, and winterberry. They're color coded. They will be planted in accordance with the landscape plan based on the landscape density calculation. The remainder of the area here where all the lawn was established and the work was done where the wall is being removed, up to 52 feet will be planted with a herbaceous seed mix, which will allow for, it's the usual planting mix that I use, which will allow for growth of different varieties of meadow plants during the different parts of the growing season. And that's about it. And the commission just wanted more specifications on where the shrubs are going and the outline, which I color coded, hopefully in compliance with your local regulations, which is in this area right here. So it's outlined in brown. The work area is outlined in brownish. So that was basically it. From what I can recollect, it was the number and the specifications of where the shrubs were going to go.
Okay, any of the commissioners have any questions? If not, do we have a motion?
Right. What's the DEP file number on this? Do you have it?
04963.
Move to close a public hearing and issue an order of conditions for Mass DEP file number 204-0963 for 3031 Goldsmith Street.
And I guess this needs a waiver too, because it's a restoration, so.
Yep. Matt, you have
The waiver request form was filled out, yes.
okay.
Yeah, there
Yes.
is I should have just included it in my motion. And
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you.
All right, roll call vote. Michael,
Michael Livingston, aye.
Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Chase,
Chase Gervais, aye.
Brian,
Brian Crowley, aye.
Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
All right, and myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move on to the 10 o'clock continued public hearing request for amended order of conditions 9 Air Road, Mass DEP 204898. Anyone here to speak to that?
They're usually pretty good about asking for a continuance. So because this agenda was so terrible, they probably asked for one and I didn't make note of it.
Okay.
But they did get the planning board approval. So they are done. I will remind them to come in on the 7th.
Okay, awesome.
And we have, Amy, sorry, this agenda was so packed that I hadn't even looked at this one yet. Do we have the peer review that the
Yes.
planning board had? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, let's jump back. So we're actually a few minutes ahead for the 10:15. Let's go ahead and jump back to our administrative discussions. We are through Surrey Road on the agenda. 23 goals and then officers vote. Amy, that's you.
Yeah, the goals, again, the agenda got past me and I didn't even get a chance to review them. So I would just ask that if anybody did have a chance to review them and has any comments, additions, whatever, just send me an email. The select board has just asked that all the different departments get them to them with the expectation that most are going to be exactly what we had already submitted with the annual report or with the budget.
One goal I wanted to talk about, maybe more for the commission to take on than for Amy specifically, is a tree replacement plan. I know we've been kicking this around for a while, but it seems like something that we could form a small subcommittee, a couple people, maybe pull Matt Cahill in and be able to come up with explicit direction for applicants when they have to remove a tree or damage a tree, what the replacement needs to be for those.
Okay.
I think it would benefit applicants and us because we could simply read off the script.
Also one thing in regards to goals, one is to get Amy's assistant in here. So I did mention to select member that we'd like to kind of make sure that's back on the front burner. So.
It is back on and I'm not sure it was posted today, but either today or tomorrow it will be posted. And I'm going to make sure she has the information for MACC and the MSMPC to post them on there too.
Excellent. Okay. Good news. Happy hunting.
Yeah.
Officers vote. Hello. So Chase hopefully still agrees to take over as co-chair. As you can see, my surroundings has changed. I'm in Maine. I will, oh, Chase just went black. Super funny, not. Yeah, I will still try and be on the next couple and make some of these site walks. But so with that, I don't know, as a point of order, if Chase becomes unavailable, you do need someone who will fill in the past. I know Carla stepped in for that. We need someone to kind of be next in line per se.
Or Andrew could do it as clerk.
Yeah, I think we talked about Andrew stepping in from the clerk's role.
Is that an affirmative nod, or that was kind of like a side nod? Like
The clerk is happy to cover when necessary.
excellent. And someone would slide into your roll call vote. Okay. Awesome.
I will slide into the clerk's role when he's acting.
Okay.
So Andrew has already been voted as clerk, so I think we just need a nomination and move or whatever it is for Chase as co-chair.
Well, we already did that. So I nominate Chase as co-chair.
Second.
Right, moved in second. We've got a roll call vote. Carl.
Come over, guy.
Kyle.
Oh, Maxfield, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Brian.
And Crowley, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Chase. And myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you. Nagog Orchard Committee, we have a site walk tomorrow, which will be the first the committee's ever done. And then I will be passing the reins hopefully over to Kyle. I believe we had already made a motion, and I will let the select board know that Kyle will jump in to my spot. So once your coaching career is done for the season. Okay. If there's no discussion on the orchard, let's go to request for certificate of compliance, 260 Foster.
This is the farmhouse at Durkee. And this, again, is for work that was never done. I think I mentioned this last time when they came in and with the RDA that they haven't submitted yet for the notice of intent. But this is just cleaning that up. That it was a certificate of compliance for work never done, basically.
Okay. Motion?
Move to issue a certificate of compliance for 260 Foster Street, Mass DEP file number 204806.
Second.
All right, moved in second. Roll call vote. Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Kyle.
Oh, Maxfield, aye.
Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Chase.
Please carry that.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay, we're going to jump over to the 1015 continued public hearing notice of intent, 67 Foster Street, Mass DEP 204956. Replacement of a failed septic system.
Good evening, everyone. Chris McKenzie from Dillis and Roy here. If you'd like, I'll share the screen to get the plan up on there for everyone to see.
Thank you.
Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. At our last meeting and site walk and stuff, a number of things were discussed. One matter was the location of the wetland flags. Amy and Seth Donahoe from our office went out and took a look at it, and they adjusted the location of the wetland flag number 3 located here, and they added wetland flag 2A over here. an additional thing that was requested not only by yourselves, but the Board of Health wanted to see a small retaining wall placed at the toe of the slope here. It's going to be about 2 feet high, probably in the highest spot, right in that area there. But the rest of it will be less than 2 feet high. And that helps keep the fill from getting any closer, of course, to the wetland than what we have here. Additionally, we spoke about stabilization of the steep slope on the side of the system. We're calling for erosion control blankets to be placed there. Obviously, there isn't going to be very much because there's not a large area, but it'll be a short slope that'll be fairly steep. So we've called for those erosion control blankets. And we've also called for a silt fence and straw wattles for the erosion control barrier. The Board of Health asked for a couple other minor things that were also addressed on this plan. But beyond that covers most everything that was done.
I recall that we also asked for an alternatives analysis to this location. Can you update us on that, please?
There was no other location available. That was discussed at the Board of Health meeting the other night, and between the agent and the board, they felt that there was really no other choice but for this location. And again, I stated this at the last meeting. This is the thinnest location, thinnest system. It's only, I think, 9 feet wide. Sorry, 8.83 feet, 8 feet 10 inches wide. It's one of the skinniest possible systems out there, and that is what allows us to minimize as much as possible the offset between the wetland and the system, and then the system and the house. We had to scoot the system over a little bit to maintain a 20-foot offset. I'm only about 3 feet from the tank over here. Really, that's tighter than you want to be, but it's what we have to do to make it happen.
So I specifically recall we discussed whether or not the adjacent to the driveway and garage was feasible, and my recollection was that you were going to look into that and provide us what the layout would look like there if a system were to be installed there. To the commission, am I misrecalling this?
No, you're right, Chase, but we did discuss it in the field at the site visit.
Okay.
I don't know if you've had a chance to drive by or if you've seen the site, but the plan is definitely one of those sites. Yeah. I mean, when you see it and it starts talking about your elevations and the contours out there, down at the bottom of it was like a 9-foot fill.
It would. It's about an 8 or 10-foot drop from the area up here to the area back here. So we'd be looking at probably a 10 or 12-foot retaining wall back here, which is just an unreasonable thing to have to do. The engineering that would have to go into a wall of that height would just be crazy. It would just be,
it would be filling into the garage as well.
Yeah, it would, and then you got to remember too, there's a house right next door, right?
Yeah, that adjacent house is right on the property line. Like I said, this plan, it makes it look like there's a lot of space there. When you get out there, you lose all that space. It's kind of misleading here.
Right.
Speaking of loss, can we talk about the trees? It looks like there's quite a few that might be impacted in the back where the system's going.
There's a small tree right along the edge of the wetlands. I think that will probably be all right. There might be a little bit of root damage in here. This tree here is going to be fine. That won't be a problem. This one's got a little bit of fill around it, maybe 6 or 8 inches. Certainly no overdig required here, so there's no excavation going on. It'll only be fill. So I think, I don't think that tree has to go. There was some shrub stuff right in here. We didn't locate any of that stuff, but none of that was all that large. And the existing system's all over here. And on this end, it was the same thing. It was all kind of small stuff. But no large trees are being taken down.
So I think if we could look at an offset for that impact of the trees and really right up to the wetlands to see if there's something that we can do in the front of the lot to try and help offset that, that would be appreciated.
I would say necessary here in the sense that I just don't think some minimal root damage and hoping the tree survives is probably a sufficient thing.
Right, and I think our past experience with trees and building hasn't gone very well.
No.
Amy, had we in our sidewalk, did we discuss, or maybe Carl remembers, Brian, like some mitigation work out in the wetlands? Amy, you're muted.
There was a little bit of discussion about that, and I did pass that discussion on to Chris and Seth, so they at least knew about it. But I wasn't sure where you all wanted to take it.
I think we wanted to try and remove as much of that Phragmites as we possibly can as part of mitigation for this. It seems to make some sense, seems logical. It's good mitigation, would improve the area back there. That Phragmites seems to be fairly isolated to that. So I think you could have fairly good success back there.
Yeah, I agree. It seemed pretty minimal relative to what's in town. It seemed like too much of a lift.
Can you all just reference for us like what wetlands flag or what area that would be in?
Oh, it's all behind the house.
The whole thing, okay.
Yeah.
How far back does the invasive go? Does anyone know?
I didn't walk back there.
My understanding is this wetland's fairly large going back.
Oh, it doesn't. It does not go the whole width all the way back. I don't know.
Yeah, right. It was all within sight from what we could see standing at the edge of the wetland. So
100 feet max. Probably.
Yeah, I would say less. Yeah.
So, Carl, follow that train of thought. Are you asking them to come up with a plan of how to?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you could just articulate for Chris what you're seeking, that would be appreciated.
So we'd like to have a what kind of plan would we call it? It would be a mitigation plan for removal of the existing Phragmites that is located behind the house. We don't have the square footage of it right at this point, but it's all within visual sight. And removed properly so that it'll be eradicated in that area. And there are techniques to do that.
Yeah, Seth Donahoe forwarded me some information, which I did send to the owner. I didn't get any response back from him concerning that matter, so I don't really have a response on it till I speak with him, of course. But we do have some information about standard procedures that can be used out there. And we will look into that, and I will talk to the owner about it.
In the commission's history, I think it's not like a one and done. So you look at whether it's a second year or third year follow-up. So as part of that.
Okay.
Does the commission have any other comments or concerns for Mr. McKenzie? So we meet again on June 7th. If you could supply us with the additional information that's been sought, that would be great.
Okay. So what would you expect for me to provide you regarding the trees? The locations are there. They're shown. One of them is really completely out of the work area. One of them has a minor amount of fill being placed around it. And one of them might have some root disruption based on however big the root ball is for the thing. I don't really have an answer for that. So I just don't know what's expected.
Right, because they're in a resource zone, we would ask you they would be basically bumpered, and they would also have construction fencing so that people understand that the area symmetrical to the tree cannot be touched or worked on as well. So they have to be very, very visible. You'll see some people put, wooden slats up and wrap it together, but you definitely need some type of construction fencing as well.
And to be clear, that's around the drip line of the tree. Construction fencing just off the trunk is a recipe for killing the tree.
Right. Well, the problem is that some work in the drip line of the tree is going to have to be done. So
understood. And so in that circumstance, what I would ask you to do is consider a restoration plan with that. And I'd like to know what species of tree, what the diameter is of that tree, and how you propose to replace that tree, anticipating that work within the drip line of that tree will kill it.
Okay. I'd ask the commission to keep in mind that this is a septic system upgrade for a failing septic system that these people are being required to do by law to replace this system. So, a tree here, a tree there on a residential lot, I understand they're in the buffer zone, but this seems a bit extreme for really a septic system repair for a system that's contaminating the groundwater as we speak. So these delays seem a little excessive for the project at hand, which is again an upgrade for a failing septic system.
For the commission, can you just reiterate how close your work is to the wetlands flag?
In this area right here is the closest approach. We're going to be about 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet for the retaining wall at the toe of the slope.
Is 100 feet from there. So this is extraordinary that you're doing this close of work to the wetlands line.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. Any commissioners have any other questions for 67 Foster Street? Okay. We'll see you on June 7th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so we will circle back around under administrative discussions. If anybody else can take a peek at that list, I think that we've gone through everything and the 2 that we added as well. Okay.
Yep, I think so.
Okay.
And we'll just add also that middle of July, we'll be back live unless something changes.
That will be interesting to see if something changes that. So, okay. Amy, if you could send off on either Wednesday or Thursday, just a reminder for the site walk Thursday at 5:30. So right now we've got Andrew and Michael doing that, but just if you could send out a reminder, that would be great.
Yep.
And you do have in a lot of those amendments that were sent around, you do have some conservation restriction language for Cobb. So I know there were a lot of attachments. It was a big meeting, but if you have a moment before you press delete or emptying your trash, you get a chance to just kind of look back in on some of the additional paperwork that we had for tonight. All righty. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn? Adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Okay. Second.
All right, roll call vote. Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Chase.
Yes, sir.
Carl.
Tom Melberg, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
All right, myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good week, everyone.
Good, thanks.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night, everybody.